I'll call the meeting to order. This is the executive session of the January 28, 2014 meeting of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. We'll start out with our executive session. Later on, we have two matters from public hearing. During our executive session, again, the public is free to watch. There's no public comment or anything during our executive session. We have three members absent today. So fortunate we have all three alternates present, and all three, I think, we're on all of the old business. So it's easy math today. There's 7 of us, and everybody can decide everything on the agenda, and including making motions and everything. So with that being said, the first item on the agenda is the minutes from January 14th, 2014. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner Jacobson and second by Commissioner Calabrese. Any discussion or questions on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes of January 14th, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved unanimously. Next item on our agenda is 1229 Post Road, request of Jeff Ginty to revise condition of approval for an awning over an outdoor dining patio in the Center Design District.
Okay. Back in July, this commission approved a retractable awning system for the Barrow Restaurant at the Brickwalk. The applicant at that time offered that the framework for this awning would be removed in the off-season. In their recent, and that was made a condition of approval. The framework is to be removed in the off-season. After it's now been installed, pursuant to their letter that they submitted, it was a little more complicated than they were first led to believe. So they're seeking permission to leave the framework up. There is a series of photographs that you have in your packet. The third page, if you were to flip to the third page of those photos, that represents what the framework looks like without the roof or the wall flaps down, is what it would look like if they were to leave it up. They are not seeking to use it beyond the seasonal dates that this commission approved for all outdoor seating, which is April 1st through the end of October. But apparently its construction was more complicated than they were first led to believe when they offered that it would come down in the off-season. So they're seeking a revision to the condition to allow it to remain but not occupied in the off-season.
We need a motion to at least discuss it. Yes, Mr. Kennelly. A motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion to approve it. Discuss.
Okay, a motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly, second by Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Kennelly.
I just have questions. Sorry. I just have questions for staff. Did they go into any detail? We don't have that much backup here about what exactly were is it just that the framework turned out to be is less? I mean,
well,
what's involved here to take it apart? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
they were okay with it before.
Right. They were led to believe that the manufacturer of this particular system was going to install this themselves. And that did not prove to be the case. So the awning company that was kind of the middleman here had to hire a crew to install it. And it's their claim is that the screws and whatnot that are in there will, you'll be able to take it apart a couple of times, but after which you're not going to be able to put it back together again. So their claim is they got bad information from the manufacturer of this, such that they didn't follow up on their end.
Can I ask you what page 4 is representing? Is this with the roof pushed back or something? What is page 4?
Yeah, if you look at the bottom two photos,
right?
It's with the.
Is that what it is now?
Yes, with the roof withdrawn and the sides up, it's basically the aluminum frame.
So that's all they want to leave up?
Correct.
So basically, the right-hand picture on the final page is where they'll be. On the last page there is where they'll be if we say it's okay. This frame stuff around, is that
Bottom
correct?
right on page 3.
Well, this last page.
Oh, last.
Is that it? Is that where they'll be?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so on the very last page...
There should look like the bottom right-hand photo on page 3. Or the bottom, both bottom photos.
This one, okay?
This one? No. No, because I'm saying,
All right, because
well, yeah, I don't think that's what you
We may be
mean.
a different order.
Maybe
Yeah, I think a different
order.
order. Is this what
Mine
we're
has-
talking
This
about?
one looks like
If the look is this,
May I approach the bench?
yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
show us all which
This is
picture.
right,
Approach
then
the
it's the
bench.
frame. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That I can live with.
No, I'm looking at
No.
this.
Oh, okay.
Which is,
What were they showing that for? Is that just pre-construction?
all right, so it'd be this.
What? Oh, geez.
This right here. This one is what it'll look like.
That's, right, just the posts in the frame. Right.
Is the awning retracted
Are we
or
all on the same
not?
page here?
I think so.
Looks like the awning's still up.
These two
Totally.
posts.
The other pictures
What were the other
show
things?
it in a variety of configurations with the walls down or the roof not, you know, the roof
Was this,
extended and the roof not
what,
extended.
I guess what I'm asking, Jim, what I'm asking is in that that last page of photos, last one that are in this packet, it looks like the awning's been retracted. You see here it's been pulled back, but it doesn't look, is it retracted here? It doesn't look like it. It looks dark.
It will be retracted.
It will be, okay. I don't know.
We have other thoughts on this? Yes, Commissioner Francis and then Commissioner Corcoran.
Will the wall be down?
Will the wall be down, she's asking.
No, the only thing that will remain is the little triangular piece above the horizontal frame. The vertical walls that are shown in the other pictures will not be down.
Removed.
Right, they'll be rolled up and stowed, so it,
Secondly, I would,
You need to use a microphone, I'm sorry.
I would remind the commissioners that we had a very serious storm on October 29th or 30th. Very serious. Perhaps this should be October 1st and not November 1st.
well, their ability to raise and lower the walls and retract the roof can be almost instantly.
Yeah.
It's motorized, they're there and they can take that apart rather quickly.
Yeah, that's not really what they're asking for. We have outdoor dining guidelines that apply to everybody. We applied it to them, and we said we have to take it down in the winter, which we make people do, and now they're saying, we don't want to take it down because of these difficulties. So the question before us is whether we allow them to leave this up or not,
We
or
have-
to stick with our current
Right.
conditions of
We
approval.
have, there are a couple examples of restaurant seasonal awning frames that do remain in the off-season. This particular applicant offered to remove it during the off-season, and therefore, the commission accepted that as a condition of approval. They're now kind of taking that back, saying, we didn't really mean it, well, we did, but we didn't know we were getting ourselves into. Yeah, it makes more sense for us to leave it up during the off-season.
I gotta go to Mr. Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. Commissioner Francis, are you done? You have any questions? Commissioner Corcoran, then Commissioner Kennelly again.
Why do we ask that the frames be taken down in the winter?
Why? Well, I think largely because it was offered by the applicant. In the initial application, their letter of intent, they anticipated the ability to remove it easily, and it turns out that doing so isn't as easy as they initially thought.
But we have guidelines that suggest that they be removed in the winter, is that right?
It's a case-by-case basis with this commission. I mean, for example, the name of the restaurant, OCN, I want to say, on the corner of Reef and Sherman Street, has a frame. It's not maybe as elaborate as this, but they have a frame that's up.
So we haven't decided in the past that it's desirable to have them removed in the winter for any reason?
Yeah, I sat on this, Commissioner Corcoran, and what occurred is that they were the ones really, I think, concerned whether they'd be approved for the outdoor dining. But ultimately, the rationale for any of this is to make sure that no one goes beyond the end of October with outdoor dining. And oftentimes, the commission was worried that what might begin as a structure that was temporary would end up being something that would be year-round.
Okay.
And it's pretty clear that by the level of deconstruction here, that you're not going to have a year-round structure. So from my perspective, I think I'm okay with this, in changing that condition, but, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure, I wasn't really sure about it when we approved this either. I mean, just reading, I'm sorry, Mr. Kennelly. But my letter, that they thought it would take one day, and it took 7 weeks, and they've got, it's financially unfeasible to take it down. I mean, it sounds like this probably shouldn't have happened, and now they want us just to give them some relief so they don't have to take it down. My biggest question would be, is this slightly, because it's a good question, if something, looks okay, that's fine, but if people have like just tables and chairs set up outside and they're not doing that, obviously you'd want them to take it down. So I think the question here is this somehow unsightly, detracting from the appearance? Because if so, I would want this down, and I wouldn't care what kind of feasibility or unfeasibility that they said they would. It's a condition of approval. But if people think this looks okay in the photos, then there is precedent, like Mr. Wentz said, for leaving it up. So that's my thought. So Mr. Kennelly, do you have something else, and then Mr. Calabrese? Okay, Mr. Calabrese.
Right off the bat, I don't have any issues with the structure staying up. I mean, as long as they have the awning pulled back, it's not going to accumulate snow or anything like that. My one question would be, are the planters staying or going? The wooden planters that are around the edge in every picture?
I expect those to, well, I can clarify that. I think they intend to remain, so people aren't walking through there, but I can get clarity on that.
That's really the only question I have. I mean, as long as it's not like they can use the space for anything other than dining or, hanging out outside. And as long as the tables aren't set up and they're not,
Well, what
having
would your
people sit
preference
out
be?
there.
For they to remain or for them to go away?
I would prefer them to go away,
Okay.
personally.
Okay.
I think by them staying out there, it gives the appearance that there's an outdoor seating. Even if there's no tables, there might be people outside doing whatever people do.
Go ahead, Mr. Cannell.
Not to prolong this, but I would just say, I think it's just up to the commissioner's feelings that you've raised, Mr. Secretary, that is it unsightly? I mean, the pictures don't make it look too terrible, and I do think that removing the planters, if they're not too heavy and it's not too onerous a job to do, does further emphasize that it's not a place for any, customer activity of whatever kind. So, I can live with that as an instruction too.
What do other people think about the planters? Any thoughts on that? Mr. Calabrese's suggestion, I tend to agree with it, like Mr. Cannell. Yes, Commissioner Coleman.
I agree with Mr. Calabrese that it would look better without the planters.
Okay.
I agree.
So we would ask them to remove the planters.
So if you're inclined, so the frame can stay, the patio is not to be used beyond the approved dates, in that the planters be removed in the off-season.
Yeah. Right. Those would be our conditions, I think, that we're talking about to revise as conditions of approval. It would be yes, but the frame can stay, the patio, not go beyond the, which are standard conditions for everybody. There's a certain season that applies to all outdoor dining. If we were going to revisit it, we'd have to revisit it for everybody.
So you're not
Francis.
extending the season for them, you're just allowing the frame to remain in its
Right.
open condition.
Right, we're not extending the season,
And the planters to be removed.
and the planters to be removed. Anything else?
Yeah,
Yes, Commissioner Calabrese.
I know I suggested the planters should be removed, but now I'm looking at that wall there. I'm not sure off the top of my head of how far of a drop that is. But they may end up running into another issue if someone is leaving the restaurant and walks off that, and maybe those planters
And steps off the patio.
and steps off. It's a pretty steep
Oh,
fall.
yeah.
Sorry, I overlooked that.
No.
Yeah, it's like
It's
close
just,
to 2 feet.
it looks a bigger, yeah.
It's close to 2 feet. You walk right off the
So-
edge, you're right.
Yeah, maybe we should
right.
reconsider that one.
It's not noticeable at first because it comes out at
Yeah.
an angle.
In light of,
It's height.
in light of that observation that I also overlooked, I would probably recommend they remain.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
take it
It's
back.
okay. Good catch right now,
Yeah, right, yeah.
or else we'd be talking about this next meeting.
Right, yeah, somebody suing.
So,
I guess we have to withdraw that element then.
yep,
So the frame can stay in its open condition, and the patio, the season is not extended beyond the October 31st date.
yes. Anybody else, any other? So who moved it? Mr. Kennelly moved it, so he's amended his motion for those two conditions. And Commissioner Jacobson is okay with those two conditions. I think you seconded it, or Mr. Calabrese seconded it. Mr. Corcoran seconded it, sorry. I don't remember. Yes, are you okay with those
Yes, I am.
conditions, Mr. Corcoran? Okay. Any other discussion on this item? No, okay. It's been moved and seconded that we revise the conditions approval. Our motion is to revise the conditions and let the frame stay, but in an open condition, and not to use the patio beyond the dates already specified. Okay, if there's no other discussion, then I will call for a vote. All in favor of the request of Jeff Ginty to revise the conditions of approval for awning over outdoor dining plan, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion is approved. Next item is 3685 Black Rock Turnpike, request of Black Rock Congregational Church for a 50% release of a $606,992 bond pertaining to special exception improvements in the AA zone.
Okay, as this item indicates, this is Black Rock Congregational Church. You may be familiar with their expansion and new construction project. The bulk of this bond is for site drainage, which has all been installed. The rest of it, well, not the rest of it, the majority of what's remaining is the porous pavement. There's going to be probably our largest, without a doubt, our largest installation so far of impervious pavement to be installed here. They can't do that until the spring, but the sub-base is all in, the drainage is in, the curbing is all in, and you do have a report in your packet from our engineering department that they concur that 50% of the bonded improvements have been done to reduce this bond by 50%.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Motion to approve the bond release by Commissioner Calabrese, second by Commissioner Jacobson. Any discussion? This is a 50% of 606,000, so we'd be releasing 303,000.
That's correct.
This is a fairly large bond, would
It's
be
a
my only
substantial
comment. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor of the 3685 Black Rock Turnpike, request of Black Rock Congregational Church for a 50% release of a $606,992 bond pertaining to special exception improvements in the AA zone, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's approved unanimously. Next, we have a new application to recommend to public hearing, 41 Fairfield Beach Road, special exception application of Fairfield Beach Club to rebuild an existing boathouse and a pool house.
This is the Fairfield Beach Club, as the item indicates. They have several buildings on their property. This building, if you're familiar with the site, is the building farthest to the west. It's essentially an elongated garage. The first two-thirds of it on the waterward side is essentially a boathouse in which they keep sunfish sailboats and kayaks for their members' use. The back third is a lifeguard office and a restroom and the pump, or the pool equipment for the adjacent swimming pool. This building, as you can imagine, suffered substantial damage during Storm Sandy. The club has been debating as to whether they would repair in place or replace the building. They've elected to replace the building. So this is a special permit to essentially rebuild a very similar building to what presently exists. And it does require public.
Okay, do we have a motion? The motion is to move it to public hearing, not to approve.
I move that we have a public hearing.
Motion to public hearing by Commissioner Corcoran, second by
I second.
Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of moving 41 Fairfield Beach Road, special exception application of Fairfield Beach Club to rebuild an existing boathouse and pool house to a public hearing, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's approved to move to public hearing. Now we go to old business, 2121 Cross Highway, Wellington Drive, request of Attorney Charles Jankowski for 100% release of a $12,910 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in the AAA zone. We heard this last time. All members here were present.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just go over really briefly what was presented at the hearing. On January 10th, 2012, the TPC Commission approved this two-lot subdivision. The bonded improvements included drainage, monuments, bituminous ramp, and site stabilization. The total bond was $25,820. On 12/13/12, 50% was released. The work that was remaining was site stabilization and the paving of the driveway apron area. This work has been completed. We do have a report from the engineering department which reviewed the completion of those items, and they recommend 100% of the remaining bond, which is $12,910. That's what was presented in the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Devanchik. Do we have a motion on this bond release?
I move it.
Move to approve by Commissioner Coleman, second by Commissioner Jacobson. Any discussion? No, we heard this last time. discussion? Okay, then I'll call for a vote on 2221 Cross Highway, Wellington Drive, request of Attorney Charles Jankowski for 100% release of a $12,900 bond. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's approved unanimously. One more item of old business is 80 to 90 Kings Highway Cutoff, special exception and special permit application of Country Realty and Company and Anthus Corp. Pertaining to the construction of an addition to an existing automobile for service facility.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll briefly review what was presented at the hearing. This applicant seeks to approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission to continue and expand an existing automobile repair facility. 90 Kings Highway cutoff consists of 20,586 square feet. It is presently improved with a 3,745 square foot, one-story vacant diner building and associated paid parking area, which contains approximately 51 striped spaces. The 80 Kings Highway cutoff of the existing auto repair site consists of 69,592 square feet and is presently improved with an automobile service and parts facility operating, as the chairman mentioned, the new county Lexus, and an associated paid parking area with approximately 83 striped parking spaces. The service facility consists of two buildings. The first is located on the northerly side of the property adjacent to I-95 and contains 12 service bays, one wash bay, and a parts department. The second building, located along Kings Highway cutoff on the southeasterly portion of the property, consists of a service administration department, customer waiting area, service advisory offices, and two drive-in service right-of lanes. In February 2013, the ZBA approved the street line variance to permit a portion of the proposed building addition to be located in the front yard setback. The main reason to do this is because it will be attached to an existing building, and that would allow it to be consistent as far as the frontage. The proposed building addition will be approximately 10.8 feet from the street line in lieu of the 25 feet required, again, consistent with the existing building that it's being attached to. New County proposes to merge 9 Kings Highway Avenue with 80 Kings Highway cutoff, the properties. The diner building is proposed to be demolished, and the building addition will be constructed on the southwesterly end of the existing service administration building. This addition will be located primarily on the 90 Kings Highway cutoff parcel and will include 16 service work stalls, equipment storage room, a break room, bathroom, employee locker room, and locker room. The proposed service addition will be one story and approximately 9,130 square feet in floor area. When completed, there will be a total of 29 service bays on the property located in the existing buildings and the service addition. Interior renovations, as reviewed, are outlined for the commission, basically proposed within this service addition are relative to room and corridor layouts. The service addition and service administration building exteriors will receive new paint, cultured stone, and cladding. The existing service facility building will not be physically altered, but will be repainted to match the color scheme of the service addition and service administration buildings. To respect the former, there was a condition placed on the property by the ZBA which prohibited parking in front of the building. Limiting parking to the rear and the sides of the property will conceal from view the commercial service activities taking place on the property. That was represented on the site plan that you received. Over 100 new plantings. There was a landscaping plan submitted as part of this. New plantings, including trees, shrubs, flowers, are proposed. In addition, existing block wall that currently separates the properties will be removed, and a new paving and parking space striping will be installed. Other improvements include new sidewalks, curbing, site lighting throughout 90 Kings Highway cutoff, which is all described and identified for the commission. One of the 2 existing driveway curb cuts serving 90 Kings Highway cutoff will be removed as part of this application. The proposed parking lot will be altered to accommodate the service addition. An unenclosed canopy will also be constructed alongside the wall to service right-up lanes for vehicles awaiting the customer pickup. This is if you remember, this basically covered about 1,000 square feet. All total, there'll be 148 parking spaces on the site. And then the last thing that was briefly reviewed is the signage will be updated and repaired, pretty much remaining the same, of course consistent with our Section 29 regulations. There is also an existing pylon sign that will remain, and that essentially was what was presented to the Commission at the public hearing.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on this item?
I move to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner Corcoran,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Calabrese. Discussion? Mr. Corcoran, Mr. Calabrese, would you like to start?
Based on what I heard, the application meets our rules, and I favor economic development in general for the town.
Thank you. Mr. Calabrese?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this application as well. I mean, that diner that's down there is a blight for the town right now, and I think demolishing that and putting a nice-looking service facility down there would really benefit the town, as will the increased tax generation. So.
Thank you, Mr. Calabrese. Anyone else? Okay, one concern I mean, I agree with it's getting rid of a blight. It consolidates the properties. It's definitely a visual upgrade for that area. I'm in favor. Mr. Alessi expressed some concerns about the parking during the public hearing. So, I mean, this is kind of a combination. We see a lot of these where there's a facility, it's a lot, and all of a sudden new vehicles are parked there. Do we have standard conditions about no unloading vehicles on the street and that type of?
Yeah, our standard condition, needless to say, first of all, we wouldn't have the kind of problems with this site that you do with a new car place where they're selling them, because we do deal with a lot of that on Commerce Drive with the new vehicles.
Yep.
However, with this approval and also the others, that we always, the condition of approval, and actually it's in our parking and access regulations, that any loading and unloading has to be done on the site. And if you remember in the original application, they did show and identify an area where that, if there was a large car carrier, there is an area on site that they can do that. The other thing I think is important to understand here is because of the configuration of the property, and actually part of the reason the ZBA had their condition with no parking in front, it is pretty much almost impossible, I wouldn't say impossible, but for any kind of parking to be merged out on the Kings Highway. It's just the way the site's constructed and the way they've orientated their access to the property, it just wouldn't be practical for them to park off-site on the street. I don't believe it's permitted, on-street parking permitted there anyway.
No.
So, to answer your question, two things. One is, there's no parking that's permitted in front of this on the road anyway. And secondly, there is an area, if they were going to have new car carriers, based on the condition of approval of the original application, there's an area on the site to do that. But as mentioned at the hearing, and there was a question at the hearing, they don't do that just because, I mean, they do store some new cars there, but they're driven there from other sites.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're driven there, they don't come in on car
No, and
carriers.
if they do, again,
If they do, it'll be
have a
unloaded.
condition that it has to be done on site.
Do we have to do anything with the ZBA condition prohibits parking in the front? Do we have to act on that at all, or
No,
basically that's part of the
you approve their
condition
site
is
plan,
there?
that's what you have. You have the parking oriented in the back, the sign, and and the ZBA condition is enforceable just based on their condition.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Jacobson.
I will support this. I do have reservations about the parking and the cars and the traffic, but considering the fact the diner is down there, and I guess it's the best alternative for the property, so I will support it.
Do we need, anything about like the parking being in the designated spaces? I mean, there was also some talk about them parking on the grass, or, they have whatever, 100 and, I can't remember, it was
148
148
spaces.
yeah. It seems like it would be adequate to me, but again,
Yeah,
looking at, depending on the new cars.
The practical answer to that is
Yeah.
it's self-regulating,
Yeah.
because if they don't have room for their service parking area, there are people that aren't going to take their cars to be serviced there. Although that's controlled also, because it's more or less on a appointment basis, so they have control over their capacity.
Okay. Anyone else? No. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. with, some standard conditions.
Yeah,
We'll-
there'll be a bond for those improvements, including landscaping and all the sidewalk construction.
Okay. Any further comment? Yes, Commissioner Francis.
I don't suppose that at this point we can say we don't like the two different stones on these two front buildings.
Stones on the front
I
building.
asked him on
The
Tuesday.
cladding versus
Yeah. I don't really like the two contiguous buildings having different stone surfaces. I don't care which one, but I didn't like it. But we probably, I asked him about it, but he said it would be too massive to have.
Yeah, I think that
the
was the
country
rationale, right?
And they are changing, they are making sure the colors are consistent.
Yeah,
They just thought it wasn't practical to extend the stone veneer onto the existing building. That was, if I remember, that was the answer.
yes, he said it would look too massive. I find it conflicting to have two different stones. But,
It was asked and answered at the hearing, I don't know, their answer wasn't practical to them. but-
wasn't what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. We don't have the same design standards in a commercial zone that we have to downtown.
No.
to apply. We have aesthetics downtown, so here it's,
Yeah, no, it's,
and in the neighborhood design district, they apply as well.
I mean, if it was totally different,
And no, it's not.
of course you'd have some flexibility there, but I think here, you don't have any specific architectural standards, industrial or this.
Anything further from the commission? Okay. Call for a vote, 80 to 90 Kings Highway cutoff, special exception and special permit application of Country Realty Company and Anthus Corp. Pertaining to the construction of an addition to the existing automobile service facility in a design commercial district. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's approved unanimously. We have one more item on our agenda before we go to public hearing. That is a compliance application of 86 Tungus Hill Road, compliance application of Barbara Metzger for an overall sign plan in the design commercial district.
Okay, just to orient you as to where we are here, this site is on Lower Tungus Hill Road between Villa Avenue and the bottom of the hill where Mighty Key Muffler is there. For those of you that may remember the old Tungus Hill hardware store, this is about 2 doors down from that location. It was a house for many years, and in the 80s was converted to a professional office building. It's now the site of a dental office. They're seeking a wall sign and a ground sign. The wall sign complies in all respects with our sign requirements. The ground sign would require this commission to approve 2 exceptions. First, its distance from the property line is approximately a foot, where 25 feet is typically required. The distance from the pavement is from the edge of the road, I should say, is approximately 8 feet. And secondly, and in my view less importantly, the letter heights are less than the required 6 inches in some cases. Because of the size of the sign, they're proposing approximately 10 square foot sign. In order to achieve the 6 foot minimum text height for all the letters, they would have to more than double the size of the sign. So they are seeking 2 exceptions that you have the discretion to consider. For the ground sign, one is its distance from the property line, and secondly, the minimum height of the copy. The wall sign is an aluminum, flat aluminum. This is not an internally illuminated sign. And the ground sign is similarly a carved panel sign. So the wall sign complies, the ground sign does not, with those 2 exceptions that they're
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Do we have a motion?
For discussion purposes, I'll move.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly, second by Commissioner Jacobson. Yes, Mr. Kennelly, would you like to start?
Sure. I don't know if we can approve a partial signage plan or whether we have to reject the entire thing, but obviously I think the ground sign has to be spiked. It's way too close to the road, 17 feet. It sets a bad precedent in terms of it being, it's funny, they even use the term wedged in, I'm for commercial development. I want commercial development to succeed. I want businesses to succeed, but it's not going to be attractive, and you know,
I think of the two, that's the one clearly that I think of this two that should not be, be approved. Now, I don't know if we can, whether we can approve with modifications. Can we do that? Can we approve?
Sure.
Yeah, then
You
fine.
can approve in part and deny in part.
Right, so my suggestion would be to approve the wall sign because it meets, I wish it wasn't that kind of rectangular white, I wish it was a little bit more attractive, but, aesthetics within the law, I mean, within the regulations, we don't have any control over, but I do think that the ground sign's way too close to the road.
Anyone else? Commissioner Corcoran, then Commissioner Francis?
On the wall sign, I don't know if this is actually a sign, but it doesn't say Tungus Hill Road, it says Tungus Road. Is that an issue?
Wrong address.
Having the wrong address?
Very good point. Yeah, the sign, I don't care if they can't fit it in, it needs to say
Yeah, I
the right
think
name of the
that's
street.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the actual text. The wall sign, they're not actually required to display the address on the wall sign. It is required on a ground sign to display the address, not so much on a wall sign. They do, I believe in the photo, there is a number above the door, 86. So they're not required to have the address there, but I think that's just
I assume the purpose of having large enough letters is so that they're easy enough to read. I mean, wouldn't this be the same thing if you're looking for an address and it's the wrong address? Wouldn't that make it difficult to locate?
No, I agree with you. I mean, there's plenty of confusion in our town about what Tungus we're talking about, what Kings Highway we're talking about, so I think the exact name of the street would be, would seem to make sense. Yes, Commissioner Francis?
That's the point I was gonna make too,
That
it's
the-
the wrong address.
The address needs to be correct.
Well, either display the correct address or not display an address at all, but do not display an incorrect address.
Correct.
Is I think what you're driving at.
Yes.
Commissioner Calabrese, did you have something, or?
Yeah,
Commissioner Coleman?
I can jump in next. I would agree with everything Commissioner Kennelly said as far as setting a precedence for this. Since I haven't been on the commission and to oversee a lot of these, in their letter to us, they say there are similar-sized signs on the same street with the same sort of setback, so this is not going to set a precedent. Have we approved anything with this sort of setback?
There are a couple of examples of signs on Tungus Hill, that lower end, that have less than 25-foot setbacks. That is true. I don't know that there are any that are quite as close as this. This actually is a smaller sign than the others on the other side of the street that have less than 25 feet. So I think it's fair to say that there have been examples of signs that are comparably situated with respect to the setback.
I just quick comment on that also. This regulation was amended to include these signs at the street line setbacks, and this one is 25 feet. There were a lot of signs established prior to that amendment. Prior to that, you were permitted to basically put a wall or a pylon sign at your property line. So I think mostly, this commission very rarely has waived the setback requirements. They haven't, but mostly it's because if it was an existing situation prior to the change of the regulation.
Okay.
That's really what, most of them are that. Most of them that exist within this setback, they were there prior to the amendment of the regulation.
Thank you. That definitely answers my question.
Oh, that was mine too, because I recall some signs down there, maybe not this close, but closer. There was, I think, there's an attorney there with a sign. It's a nice sign, and it's got to be closer than 25 feet to the road, but perhaps not this close.
That's correct.
Yes, Commissioner Corcoran and then Commissioner Coleman, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Coleman and then Commissioner Corcoran. Sorry.
Yeah, clarification, is there enough room on the property for them to observe the 25-foot setback at all? They look
No,
like...
the only way for them to achieve that would be essentially to put the ground sign in that raised planting bed, which is so close to the building that it would kind of be...
So our regs are effectively precluding them from having any kind of street sign. And therefore I
Well,
would...
if you want to hold them to the 25 feet, in this case, that's true.
And that would
But-
urge me not to hold them to the 25 feet. I guess that's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, I mean, I would just answer, that's a good point, except our regs do allow us discretion by a 2/3 vote to allow it closer, and there are some that are closer. I think the observation Mr. Kennelly was making, I don't want to speak for you, is that this was really close, not So, right, if it was 25 feet, it would essentially be
Yeah,
back
and
against the
and
building.
those, and you need to, I think, in my opinion, kind of balance the ability to have a ground sign versus the relative visibility of the building in the absence of a ground sign. You know, there are some buildings, one in particular across the street that's almost a rear lot, that you really almost don't see the building from the street, in which case not having a ground sign would be more impactful to that business than a business that you can have fairly decent visibility from the street. So those are the kind of trade-offs you have to consider.
Yeah, I agree. However, a sign affixed to the front of the building isn't visible to drivers going past unless you turn your head, and you don't want people doing that. So ground sign serves to make your building visible to traffic, car traffic. So it still serves a purpose even if the building is more visible.
All part of the balancing act you have to consider.
I think we just go Mr. Corcoran, then Mr. Kennelly. Mr. Corcoran?
Did I hear that the wall sign, the letters are not large enough according to the?
No, the wall sign fully complies. There is no minimum letter criteria on a wall sign. It's only for
Mr. Kennelly.
The thing about it is if this was 24 feet or 20 feet or something like that, you know, I might be, I'm very, you know, when it comes to things like outdoor dining and stuff, I'm very much encouraging of small business. I don't want to be a drag on small business. The thing is that the rationale for this kind of thing is to try to make sure that visual clutter for the remainder of the neighborhood does not get out of hand. Because let's face it, I mean, you remember with things like, I can think of DeVita Dialysis and things like that, where we really went around the mulberry bush with these guys in terms of what was appropriate in terms of the total signage. So if this was something that was at least, if the property permitted something that was reasonable, I'd be okay. But I do think 7 feet from the street really does get you pretty close. And so that's why I'd have a concern is just, you know, if this was a close call, I would definitely be with you on it. But on this, just a little too close to the street for me.
So you would entertain it if it were farther back from the street?
Yeah, I mean,
therefore less
but I think
intrusive?
it doesn't, as they were saying in their letter, I just don't think they have the property for it. And that's the thing is the more you sort of jam into a space visually, you're right that as you drive by, you're not going to see that sign necessarily unless you turn your head. But then again, I'm thinking to myself that I don't know how much walk-in business you're going to do for a dentist. You know, we've had this discussion, just so you know, like, and you'll see this with, for example, the emergent care over by the Mobile, for example. You know, how much signage do you want there? Is it supposed to be a place people go because they understand they're going there, or we just did this with, I think, you know, with the business with the, what was in the Sims building where the, what was the practice? OSG wanted to develop a center for you to go in an emergency if you hurt your foot. And in those cases, again, the idea was, how far do you allow a medical entity to go, DeVita Dialysis? And so that's why I think that the one sign, as long as they clean up the business with with the address so they don't confuse people, is probably going to be enough. Just let people know where it is. But, you know, there's always just a danger where you start to clutter the space. So, you know, I'd urge us to, you know, stay away from the ground sign.
Anyone else? No, there's got to be somebody that, we've denied plenty of signs, and sometimes they come back and they're a lot more palatable, so it's good to stick with it.
Actually, I was going to say.
I mean, this is like 1
I'm gonna
foot from the property line, you
Yeah,
said,
I'm not-
and 8 feet from the street line? That's pretty,
It's supposed to be 10 feet in, isn't it?
it should be, yeah, and 25 feet, actually, but yeah, I mean, it's really.
I mean,
should be-
we're more liberal
it's within
now.
the, yeah.
I mean, Commissioner Jacobson was a real stickler. I mean, he really knew the regs.
Yeah. Yes, Commissioner Jacobson.
I agree, this would set a bad precedent. I do remember another sign, and I can't remember the case, which we turned down for the very same reason.
Was that in Southport? Was it near a train station?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I do think this would set a bad precedent for the neighborhood and for future signs. So I will not support this.
Okay. It's been a while, I'm going to clarify what the motion is. Do we have a motion
Well,
to approve, deny, or?
I had a motion to approve,
Yeah.
but I asked that we could consider, with the
Amend.
Condition that we would amend that to approve the wall sign,
Yeah.
but to deny the ground sign, and with the condition that the wall sign display the appropriate address or not show it at all, if it could not do it within the proper, then there's no height limitation, but either show the correct address or not show it at all.
Thank you
motion.
for clarifying,
Right,
Mr.
right.
Kennelly. And who seconded that?
I think I did.
Yeah,
Are you okay with that,
Yes, I am.
Mr. Jacobson? Okay. It's easier to do that than voting on all individual
Right.
amendments, so that's what we try to do. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to approve the wall sign, not the ground sign, with the conditions stated by Mr. Kennelly. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion at 86 Tungus Hill Road, compliance application of Barbara Metzger for an overall sign plan, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It is approved. In part. Okay, we'll just take a few minutes to reconfigure the public hearing. If anybody needs a break now, just a couple minutes. Plan and Zoning Commission on January 28, 2014. We have two items on our agenda. The first item is a special permit application, 1275 Post Road, special permit application of Brickwalk Associates for a second floor addition on an existing commercial building for 3 residential dwelling units in the Center Design District. Mr. Fallon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm an attorney with offices here in Fairfield, and I'm pleased to be representing the applicant tonight. The Kleban Holding Company is with me, is Mr. Ken Kleban. The project involves the property located at 1275 Post Road. That's in the Center Design Business District. As you all know, and the record would reflect, that parcel is part of the Brickwalk complex, which really comprises properties going from 1127 to 1305 Post Road. I think it's fair to say, and the commission can be as proud of this as the Klebans, I think, that it's a focal point of downtown activity and revitalization. The Brickwalk has comprised a great development energy over the last decades with its mix of retail, office, and residential elements. And it's all managed, I think we would all agree, I certainly do, with a real commitment to excellence and aesthetic quality by the Klebans. And I said what I said about the commission because a lot of that iteration, all of that iteration has come from you. This proposal is to take the building at 1275 Post Road, I'll do my Vanna White here, which is where the Citibank building is. And as Jack Franzen will describe to you in a minute, add a very harmonious second-story addition comprising 3,705 square feet total, which will become the location, subject to your approval, of 3 dwelling units, which Jack will also review with you. You know, I have the good fortune to go to Trumbull and to go to Westport and to go to Norwalk and whatnot, and over the last 5 or 6 years, everybody is always asking the same question. How did Fairfield downtown become so great? Gee, I was up there on a Thursday night, and the downtown, it's so active, it's so great. And even our good sister town of Westport has been looking at their regulations and you know, in trying to invigorate. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, and we could talk about that all night long. But from my perspective, having been involved along with this commission over the last decade and a half, certainly the restaurants have played a role, but so has the introduction of residential use in the downtown center. When you amended your zoning regulations almost 2 decades ago now to include a provision for mixed use, residential use within the Center Design District, you had very good vision. And what we have now, whether it's over on Sherman Street or right here in the Brickwalk, we've benefited very substantially from the integration of residential units into our commercial mix in the downtown center. And it does create interest and vitality, and also, by the way, it creates housing options for various types of our citizenry, be they empty nesters on the one hand, or younger people who like the proximity to the train station on the other. So we're very excited about this. This is nothing new for the Kleban Holding Companies. It is nothing new for this commission. Residential has worked very well at other portions of the Brickwalk after your approval, and we think this will be a lovely introduction. One of the things I think is most lovely, and which is why I held it up with, that, you know, under the talented work of Jack Franzen and David Wojtowicz, the architectural elements here, I think, really worked very well. They were very careful to try to address a harmonious addition that blends very well with the character of the existing building and also the aesthetics of the Brickwalk, all with consideration to your design guidelines. And at this point, I'd like Jack Franzen just to come up and kind of briefly review with you the elevations and the internal floor plans. Jack.
Thank you, John. I'm Jack Franzen. I'm here tonight to go into a little more detail about what we're proposing at 1275 Post Road. We want to build a second-story addition, which, as John explained, totals 3,705 square feet on the existing Citibank building at the Brick Walk. The addition will sit largely on the footprint of the existing Citibank, which is right here, this darker area. The building, that portion of the building extends about 67 feet back from the post road, and the width on the sidewalk is about 51 feet. So basically, we're going back as far as the this little canopy, this existing canopy that you drive under to go to the drive-in teller on the Citibank. The proposed residential use, which is netting out at 2,870 square feet, is for 3 modestly sized apartments. Why don't we go to the sheet with the floor plans? The apartments range from 870 square feet to 1,000 square feet, and all of them are 2-bedroom units.
Mr. Francis, I think Mr. Cannell just has a question about the size.
What's the difference? I'm sorry, I apologize. Is that mechanicals? Why is it over 3,000 for total square footage? And
Because there's some core area, there's some hallway, and then there's, I'll explain, there's
the
a...
living area is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so the net living
Units
areas.
and stuff. All right,
Yeah. So these are, the two that face the post road are the larger units. There's one that's sort of a shotgun plan, and another one that's an L-shaped plan. Those are each 1,000 square feet. And the smaller unit back here is the one that's 870. Egress from all 3 units is by means of a fire-rated and sprinklered lobby. In fact, the whole building is sprinklered, which gets you out to this ramp that goes down to the stairwell in the existing rear portion of the building. By proceeding to the south extremity of the building, there is also an elevator. And for that reason, we've made all 3 of these B-type ADA units. Parking for the units, and we have to go back to the site plan now, is provided with 2 spaces that are right here by the stairway, the closest to the post road. There's one handicap space here that's also on the west side of the building in the L portion. And then on the east side of the L, there's 3 spaces there. And those are actually closest to the elevator. The elevator is right here. Also, we have 4 bike racks. There's only one required, but they kind of come in a stack of 4. And actually, this works out really well because there's a little covered area. Maybe it shows up better on this plan. So your bike won't get wet unless the wind is blowing. We put them right here in this little alcove here. So
Where's the elevator?
The elevator's down here, and there's 3 parking spaces really close to that elevator. And then there are 2 right by the stairwell. One additional amenity that we are creating is when we do this addition, there's a canopy on the west side of the building that goes out about shy of 5 feet. We're going out another 5 feet, let's say, 4 or 5 feet. And so now there's a covered walkway, which shows in the rendering, which presently doesn't exist. David, behind you, if you could just point out. Yeah, and that's sort of a theme that we developed in the promenade. In other words, sort of like Bologna, when you go to Italy and you walk past all the stores and you're actually covered from the elements, which works really well in this time of the year.
Mr. Franzen, just, I'm sorry. I know that in the rendering you're presenting, it's obviously representational, but the gray structure that's behind, is that supposed to, what would that represent as a matter of real world? Yeah, well, you're pointing right there. What would that represent in real world terms?
That's the Fidelity building.
It's Fidelity? Okay.
I'm not sure how accurate it is.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it might be lower.
A little impressionistic.
Yeah, well, yeah. Okay, thanks.
So we've created this 9-foot covered walkway, which I think is really huge and kind of beefed up the architecture that's right on the street. We are adding lighting, but this lighting is all recessed lighting. It'll all be underneath that overhang. and largely invisible to the post road and the parking field. The building materials that...
Sorry, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. I was just waiting for you to finish. Commissioner Jacobson
I
has a
just have a
question, and
question
then
about the
Commissioner Cole.
elevator. If
Yeah.
there's a blackout, you have a generator for handicapped people, or?
I don't believe there's a generator, but there's none required. And
Oh, all right, so they just.
there's
can't get
always
back
an
to their-
emergency
Okay.
phone in the elevator,
All
so, although it's one of my phobias, but I've been lucky.
Me too.
And you had a question, yeah, just ask, yeah, I'll just recognize, everybody, no question will go unanswered, just want to make sure
Okay.
we go in order, because I know she had to go. Commissioner Coleman, you have a question now, too?
Yeah.
You've indicated where the designated parking spaces are. It's
These
not
are,
on.
these are existing parking spaces.
There's a net reduction of 5 parking spaces available for the
They're actually allocated to this use.
I'm going to address that part.
Yeah, you
John
just
will
need to turn on your
explain.
mic, Commissioner Coleman, Corcoran.
That's the one thing I don't
push it
claim
towards you, I
to fully
think.
understand the
There you
parking
go.
of the brick walk. It's a very complicated math problem beyond my pay grade. We are adding lighting that I explained. It's all pretty much invisible underneath the walkway. The building materials that we are using are consistent with the existing structure, but also consistent with the rest of the brick walk and with the architectural standards for the zone. We are cladding this addition with veneer brick, which will be that same color brick that's on the brick walk. We're going to use ephes for the cornice, which is basically stucco, and the window sills and heads would be cast concrete, like a limestone colored cast concrete. The columns would be AZAC, which we've used elsewhere in the brick walk. We are proposing traditional divided light windows and classically derived cornice and trim details and parapets. And the building massing is intentionally broken up. In fact, one of the original designs we had pretty much run this roof straight across. We just thought it was too massive, so we broke it up into 3 parts, the 2 kind of anchors on the side. And we subordinated the volumes. And also the building is rectangular, which is obvious, but it harmonizes with all the other buildings in that area that are sort of in alignment with the post road. And last but not least, my building, 1241, we have apartments in. And I have to say, it's worked out great. We've become friendly with the tenants. They tell me that they love it there. They love the activity, the access to the restaurants, and we think this will be more of the same. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Questions for Mr. Franzen?
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Franzen.
I hope our friend and your former colleague, Mr. Jacobs, is watching this and he heard about the bike racks. Rich?
Be more interested in the parking.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that too. So the essence of this basically is the goal here with the brick walk over the last decade and a half is really to create a very consolidated and singularly beautiful gateway to the center. And I think it's done that. We have found, as Jack said, and I don't want to be repetitive, but that the invigoration that's created when you blend the retail, the restaurant, the office, and the residential really creates that kind of vibrancy that makes it a destination center. And as I said, also creates a nice living amenity for people at various stages in the community who want to enjoy it. With regard to the parking, we have shown on the plan that, did you have a question?
He just has a question about, as long as you're going to get to the parking, he's not going to break your flow. But
Right.
the parking request.
Well, the only other thing I was going to say before I turn to the parking is, obviously, residential utilization, as you found in the past here and elsewhere in the center, is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. We have numerous planning goals which speak to that as a positive and good thing, and also this is a permitted use in this district pursuant to section 12.3.16. Now, with regard to the parking, Dave Wojtowicz can walk you through the global numbers, if you would like, as far as the parking compliance chart that's shown on the site plan for all the various properties. With reference to this specific application that's before you, we have shown within those numbers, and Jack alluded to them, that we can, and if you see fit, will comply by providing 2 parking spaces per unit, a total of 6 spaces. I have asked you in a letter that I sent to your office yesterday through Mr. Devanchik, Mr. Wendt, to consider the exercise of the discretion you have under section 28.6.1, as you've done sometimes in this district and on this property, and actually reduce the actual parking requirement for these 3 units to 1 each. And the reason we ask you to do that is twofold. We have definitely found, based upon the experience of our other tenants in the various apartment units in the brick walk, that 2 per is overparked for this use and for this particular property. Most of the people, almost all of them, have 1 vehicle. And when they have guests or something, it's generally on weekends, so that, and there's more than ample parking. So we'd like not to have the spaces, 3 additional spaces that we feel are unnecessary, dedicated to these 3 units, if you concur, because we can put those spaces to good use elsewhere, now and in the future in the complex. So we have shown compliance with the total of 6, but as you have done looking at situations in the past in the Center District and also on this property, we will ask you to consider reducing the requirement to 3, which we can assure you will be more than adequate. Now, do you have other questions about the parking?
No, that's really the crux of it.
Right, but we didn't want to come in here without demonstrating that we could comply, but we would think 3 is probably the appropriate number, and your own regulations, as I said, 28.6.1 does give you that authority in the Center Design District for residential uses to reduce the parking requirement by 50%. And when you've done that in the past, I think it has not caused a problem. Commissioner Jacobs. Barrett.
Yeah, it's okay.
Commissioner Jacobs on the mic.
Mr. Jacobs, yeah, he would be here talking about parking too. I mean, I'm just trying to go through, I remember this painful
Yeah, it is painful.
parking calculation for the brick walk, especially we're dealing with it. There was one in Pine Tree Ventures, at that address that had a 50% waiver.
Right.
Were there others here? A lot of them see residential 6 units, 6 spaces on Bright Star LLC, so that seems like it was
My recollection is that the Pine Tree Ventures residential and the Bright Star residential were waived to 50%.
Yeah, it doesn't say it on the Bright Star, but it looks it because that's 6 units.
Those
6
were,
spaces.
and for those of you new in the commission, these are other buildings within the brick walk complex where previously residential units have been approved and are now occupied, and where the parking requirement for those residential units under 28.6.1 was reduced to 50%, rather than two per unit, 1 per unit. And again, without belaboring it, and it's totally your call, but it really does make sense. These units are 800 to 1,000 square feet. They generally are occupied by individuals or couples who, choosing the lifestyle that they do and choosing that location, find 1 car more than, we've never had any issues with that, either from the tenant's perspective or ours.
So the plan now says 6 spaces for this.
Right.
You would propose it reduced to 3.
Correct.
So the parking required in total for the entire brick walk would be 648, and provided it'd be 658, so there'd still be
Correct.
some room there.
Either way, there'll be room, but we'd love to have those 3 spaces available
I see.
for the future. But that's your, we wanted to show you that we could comply with the technical requirements of the reg. So in summary, and subject to any question you might have for us, we're very proud of the architecture of this building. We think it does harmonize very well with the downtown center and certainly with our properties. We're excited about adding 3 more residential units consistent with the goals of your plan of conservation and development. We think that will further invigorate the whole feel for the brick walk and continue to make this a real anchor of vitality in the Center Design Business District. And we have a good roadmap for this because, as our dialogue just indicated, we've numerous times before added residential units in keeping with the character of the center and with the downtown district in this particular complex, and it's really worked out very well. So this is just another small, but we think very nice and aesthetically pleasing opportunity to do that again, which can only help further make our downtown center, which is already the envy of this part of Fairfield County, even more strong and vigorous and impressive. So we'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Are there any further questions from the commission for the applicant? Okay, hearing none. Okay, now we'll turn to the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this application? Hearing none. Mr. Fallon, if there's nothing further,
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
I will close the hearing.
Huh? Should we leave with you? We'll keep it. Right, we'll keep it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're thinking, yeah. Okay. The next item, we have one more item on our agenda. That is 1280 Stratfield Road. It's a special exception application of Child's World Academy to establish a day nursery in an existing building and related site improvements in the Neighborhood Design Business District. You need some time to reconfigure?
No,
or-
I think we're good. Just give us 2 seconds. I'll get one other thing, Robert.
Yeah, take your time, it's okay. I'll just start, I assume the members of the public are here then to hear this application, since nobody spoke on the last. Just so everybody knows our rules, the applicant presents. Once he's done with his presentation, we'll give any member of the public a chance to speak, comment on the application, ask a question, and then the applicant has the last word. He gets to speak last and do any rebuttal time. So that's basically how our procedures work, and we'll turn to Mr. Fallon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm representing the applicant, Child's World Academy, and we're making this application for approval to establish a child care learning center at the property at 1280 Stratfield Road. This use is a permitted use in the Neighborhood Design Business District pursuant to Section 12.5.17.1 of the zoning regulations, subject to this special exception review, which we conduct tonight. Child's World Academy has a long history of successfully operating and managing high-quality child care learning centers for children from ages 6 weeks to 12 years. It currently operates centers in Trumbull, Monroe, and Peekskill, New York. With me here tonight are Ken Johnson and his wife Pat, who are the owners and operators, very much hands-on with regard to this, wonderful business that I've come to know. This is just something for you to take home when you're perusing your file. It really gives you, I think, some sense of the philosophy and the approach and the nature of the operation of Child's World Academy. And as I'm passing these out, that gets somewhat to what I think is an interesting point to make here. There's the statement that, it takes a village to educate a child. And when the Johnsons started to look around for their options to set up here in Fairfield, where they very much wanted to be and where the demographics indicate there was a real need for this, the location that they chose was important to them in terms of it being a location not only in a neighborhood design district, but in a neighborhood. Because part of their philosophy of operation is that they want to not only place their business in this particular neighborhood, but they want to integrate their business and themselves into the neighborhood, whether it be, sponsoring of athletic teams or opportunities for the public to interact and enjoy some of the programs and the facilities that we offer. So they are very, very excited about this location because it is a neighborhood location, and this is a business that is focused, as you'll see by the material I just handed out, on educating children and providing educational opportunities for children of really all ages. As you'll see when you read the material, and as I said before, our core group is to age 6 weeks to 5 years, and they're generally cared for on either a part-time or a full-time basis, depending on the needs of the family that we're serving. We also provide summer camp programs for children. We provide after-school programs for children who are school age. And obviously, above all else, we have a very, very strong commitment to maintaining our facilities in a very safe and secure environment for the community. The general hours of operation are going to be between 6:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. weekdays, with special programs being conducted sometimes on weekends, and when that happens, that would generally not be between other than 8 and 3 p.m. And as I said before, the demographics here really confirm that there's a strong need for what we propose here tonight. Let me tell you a little bit about the presentation that we want to make succinctly and focused in terms of your time and attention and that of the public, and then I'll be back to summarize, and obviously we'll answer any questions you have. Aristolis is going to momentarily walk you through the existing conditions on the site, which you're familiar with. The property has been vacant for a number of years. It certainly could stand a practical and aesthetic reinvigoration. Aris will also talk to you about the site engineering. There's a significant upgrade there as well. You'll hear him talk about the landscaping plan we proposed, the reduction of the flow rates that are from what's the current condition, the reduction of impervious surfaces and areas on the property, the introduction of rain gardens and infiltrators, which are going to help promote water quality. Also, the rain gardens are going to provide some educational opportunities. So there's much to talk about there, and I'm going to have Aris talk to you in a minute. Before I do, I'm going to hand out a plan to you, and Aris, it'll be the plan Aris will present to you. And let me tell you what is different. Over the weekend, and I talked to staff about this, we met with our abutting neighbor. There was concern that they had with regard to the sufficiency of the vegetative buffer on New Street. So Aris met with them over the weekend, and the plan you have here, which you'd have to look very hard to note any difference in, but what it does do is if you look carefully at the area that borders New Street, and he will review this with you, and it's on the plan that's shown here, we were able to shift the parking a little bit. We were able to reduce the size of the outdoor play area a little bit, although it will still comply with state requirements. And by doing that, we were able to enhance the landscape buffer to, I think, the satisfaction of our neighbors. We've had, by the way, I should say, I should have said this before, starting last spring and then through last summer, we've had numerous meetings with the residents in the area. Some of them are here tonight. I want to thank them for their time and their attention. So we, in the spirit of the remarks I made before, as far as wanting to be part of this neighborhood, built the core of this proposal from the ground up. Now, the only thing that, as I reviewed with staff today, I wanted to call to your attention is by making the very slight modification to enhance the buffer in accordance with the request of our abutting neighbor. One of the parking spaces now is set back 7.1 feet from the street line. Your regulation requires 28.10, 10 feet. However, it also says that you have the right to vary that street setback under different circumstances. One of them that is articulated in your regulation is design consideration. So we have given you a site plan in the original package that complies with the technical requirements of the regulation. But what we're giving you tonight asks you, in accordance with your discretion under 2810, to vary the setback for that one space so that we can accommodate, as we said we would want to do, the wishes of our abutters. By the way, I think it's a better plan because I think I'd rather give them the 3 feet than just the 3 feet from the street setback. So, with that having been said, because I didn't want Aris to have to go through all that, I'd like Aristolis just to walk you through the site.
Could you just point out which space it is that's...
Yeah, Aris, when Aris comes up here, he'll
okay,
point
that's
that
fine.
out,
Yep,
okay?
okay.
And I apologize for taking so long, but I didn't want him to have to go through 2810 and all that. So Aris will review with you our site plan, including our landscaping plan, and do point out where that space is.
Thank you, John. For the record, Aristolis, principal and owner of Aris Land Studio, with our office located in Bridgeport, Connecticut. As John said, you're familiar with the site, which is currently pretty much all paving except for some of the a vegetated buffer here adjacent to the New Street properties. And really, currently, all the stormwater that we have on the site just flows off-site. The catch basins that are there, which there's one here and here, they're full of debris and really aren't functioning. So from a stormwater perspective, it's just everything goes off-site into the stream. We currently have overhead electric service here and sanitary service that goes to New Street and or Fairfield Woods Road. We've kind of looked at the historical drawings, and we'll probably find that out when we dig into the ground a little bit. What we're proposing is to bring in parking on this side of the facility with both entrances off of Stratfield Road here to be one way into the site, so that the drop-off would be entering here with this area right here would be the new front door of the facility. Instead of being on Stratfield Road, the new front door, called the front of the building, is now on Fairfield Woods Road. And we've identified the drop-off area. There's a small canopy, which John Alvetto, the architect, will talk about, and defined it better with some pervious pavers. So that's one of our stormwater strategies to help with infiltration. And again, also when people drive in, it immediately kind of forces you to slow down. The opposite side of the site is really for staff. There we have 22 parking spaces, so that the whole site will have 32 spaces. Currently, the site, if you count it sort of the way it is, it's about 52 spaces, but again, that just jams in all of the cars everywhere, even where they're on the parking lot. In terms of pervious and impervious pavements, the existing impervious area is 36,000 square feet. The proposed is 31,000 square feet of impervious area, and the total site is at 42,000 square feet. So it's significantly reducing the impervious area on the site, and that does include 4,000 square feet for this play area here. New utilities will have all new. The electric will be underground, so we're eliminating that need for that major cable that currently crosses there from Fairfield Woods Road. As John mentioned about the buffer to the adjoining neighbors, when we identified it, what we did really was take all these parking spaces and slide them 5 feet towards New Street, so that the spaces remain the same, but we increased the buffer from the original plans we submitted to about 10 feet on this property here, and it's anywhere from 11 to 12 because it's kind of skewed there here along the New Street properties. And with that, we increased some of the plantings, some of the arborvitae, which are kind of the shorter variety that reach about 15 feet, and some additional rhododendron maximums here. We are also planting in that buffer Vanderwolf pines, which, you know, their height usually stays a little shorter, a little denser to help with the buffering. And we're including some understory trees like Amelanchiers. When I met with the Rose over the weekend, the Rose are right here with whom I met, and they took the time out of their weekend to sit down and talk about their concerns. We're maintaining an existing tree in the corner, which is a London plane tree, and Mrs. Rowe may be putting her name on that, I think. So she goes, that has to stay, and that definitely is staying. But we're adding trees like Amelanchiers, which are they're shorter, and instead of, because we have some shade trees remaining, that is also going to help in the buffering. We are planting a new maple tree here. Adjacent to the Stratfield property, we're maintaining the evergreen trees that are there today. So we're going to clean out some of the low shrubs, but keep the taller evergreens that are there. And then adding some dogwoods here closer to Stratfield Road. And again, the parking here from Stratfield will be buffered with some ilex shrubs and low perennials. Along New Street, we actually have the opportunity. We are removing a large oak, which I did have met with Ken Placco, and the plans that were there originally, we tried to keep it, and in consultation with Mr. Placco, we agreed to remove it, but we're replacing New Street, and we will have 4 new shade trees, including 3 elms and a maple. The refuse area is right here off of Fairfield Woods Road. That will be enclosed with a 6-foot fence, and that 6-foot fence will also match the fence around the play area, which will be 6 feet as well, to help, to screen the children from the public view. There will be a 4-foot fence just at the building so that people in the building can look out and see the children playing. In the front here along Fairfield Woods Road, we have a 4-foot picket fence, so it'll be clear, you'll be able to see through it. The sidewalk's being replaced, but along that edge, we have in the front a variety of daylilies, and then on the back of the fence, a planting of grasses such as panicums to, again, help with the buffering of the vehicles. So we're buffering the vehicles from the traffic, but at the same time also, we're keeping people from walking through the parking areas and trying to control that pedestrian flow. And this whole site, the entire site, we're installing new sidewalks and pedestrian ramps. John mentioned the rain gardens. We have rain gardens here on along Stratfield Road, and they're not huge, but again, whenever we're doing these plans, we're trying to add small opportunities for stormwater infiltration. And that's really the goal, is whatever we can do a little bit, it just helps the downstream conditions. And really, the storm flows off the site are probably about 25% less than what we had previously. The catch basins that we have do have dry wells, so again, there's additional infiltration opportunities on the site. Let's see, we talked about that. Fencing, refuse, utilities, and I think that's it. I think I covered everything.
Okay. I have some questions. Mr. Caliber, you can go first.
As far as the fencing goes, I know you said you're going to be a 6-foot fence around the play area. Chain link?
No, it's vinyl, decorative vinyl with it's in the drawings like a lattice top.
Okay. Also, gates and entries. I saw, I think 3 on there?
There's only 1 gate into the play area, which is right
From
here.
the building.
To coincide with the back door of the facility.
So there's actual no gate on any of the fencing then, anywhere around it? Just the one to get in the building?
Just the one to get in, correct.
Okay.
Just talking about parking, I was just a couple questions. One is just generally, because I'm not as familiar with this type of use as some others, if you could just describe how this parking number and configuration, is 32 spaces, I think you said 22 for staff and the rest, is sufficient to maintain the parking needs, and just how children will be dropped off, just how it's going to function during the peak hours of drop-off and pickup. And again, I don't know how many people will be there. Is it sufficient? I don't know.
Yeah,
So.
let me go through that. Obviously, the Johnsons have the opportunity, to take the experience that they've had in Trumbull and Monroe and Peekskill. So we know these parking spaces will be more than sufficient for our needs. Let me explain to you why. We run a very diverse number of programs for children of diverse ages. And as I said in my opening remarks, we do have some children who family demand is such that they're pretty much there all day, preschoolers. We have other preschoolers, those ages 6 weeks to 4 years, where they might participate in some developmental programs or part-time or so on and so forth. We have kids coming after school and so on. The point is, we don't have a big solid flow. This is not like an elementary school where the bell rings, the 200 kids show up, mom's got to drop them off, and then at 3 o'clock the bell rings and everybody goes home. During the course of our day, we have a very moderate and in and out flow because we serve so many varied programs with so many different needs. And without jumping ahead to our traffic presentation, that's one of the benefits here from a traffic standpoint too. So we maintain, for example, 22 spaces for, our faculty, but that would be an aggressively high number of really having faculty on site at one time. But if they were there, it would meet it. We also, in terms of our drop-off needs, again, because it's spread out, the spaces that we have, based upon experience, are more than adequate to meet that need, because, again, we don't have everybody showing up at once, either to drop off or pick up their kids. So those 10 spaces? 10 spaces that we're maintaining for parents to drop off and pick up their kids will be very acceptable. So the answer to your question is, it's basically based upon the nature of how our operation plays out during the course of the day, and that has been confirmed by our experience at the other locations, one of which is in Trumbull, which is going to be very, very similar to this.
Thank you. And what is the space that you're asking for the different setback
where's
on?
the
The one that's
space?
7 feet from the street?
That's right here. This is the
Okay.
property line right here.
course.
And then that distance there is 7 feet, 7.1.
Commissioner Kelly, you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed it in your well-written statement of use, but how many children will this service?
The total enrollment, well, the maximum enrollment based upon the size of the facility under state regulations is 144.
So this is a daycare center for 140 children approximately?
Under state regs, that's correct. But the likelihood of ever having any number of that children in there at any one given time is not very great at all, based again on the nature
At
of
the same
it.
time, but there could be
Right.
as many as 140.
There could be as many
students served.
as 144 clients, if you would, of the school.
So the school can't have any more than 144 clients?
Correct.
In toto?
Based upon the space, correct.
Oh, okay, but, well, again, I'm sorry, maybe I don't understand. So you can't have more than, you can't have more than 144 kids in the building at one time, or that you can only serve up to 144 in total number of students?
Right.
Because you could have 700 kids coming every other or something. I don't know, I'm just trying to get an idea.
Dan, it's that you couldn't, under state regulation, based upon the size of the facility, you can't have more than 144 children there at any one time.
One time. So in theory, there could be shifts where you could have 85 at one point, 65 at another, 120 at another.
Correct.
They could all be different individuals on different schedules.
Correct.
Okay.
Your question, Mr. Calabrese, or?
No, that answered it.
Okay, Mr. Corcoran, you have a question?
I think I heard that the old catch basins are no longer serviceable.
Yes, yes.
So what is going to replace them?
We're replacing the two catch basins here on the northwest side of the building with two new basins with infiltration wells, dry wells, and new storm lines. And then also we have a new dome basin here that connects to a new catch basin that will connect into the Stratfield Woods Road structure, and then a fourth new catch basin at the rear of the site here to connect to the storm system here.
Okay, I'm kind of new to this, but, I mean, you could have chosen, I suppose, to use pervious paving. Would that be an alternative to this, or?
We still have to create opportunities for discharge of the site. And yes, I mean, pervious paving, you do start finding opportunities for storage in terms of the aggregates that are underneath there because of the 40% pore space and such. But then again, also pervious paving is, $12 a square foot versus the price of asphalt.
I noticed you do have a small piece of pervious paving there, though, right?
Yes,
In front of the entrance?
yes. To help define that entrance in the front, yes.
So it's a visual feature, but it also is pervious.
It's visual, functional. The great thing is, let's say it snows and, you clear off the snow, it won't ice up. The water flows down. And that's another good thing about pervious paving is, just because of the air pockets, it's insulated, so you don't get freezing in the underneath it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Francis.
What did you mean by the lower right is going to connect to the Fairfield Woods structure? Does that mean sewer line?
This structure.
No.
This structure will
Yes.
connect to the storm system,
Okay.
and then this connects to the storm system.
Yeah.
They're all part of that same system, eventually going into the Rooster Brook.
And we
And then-
had a code review session, and I believe those minutes are in should be part of your record. And also, this whole application from an engineering perspective has been reviewed by the engineering department in terms of compliance with town standards and has been approved.
And the driveways are back, upper left?
The driveways off of Stratfield Road, they're remaining as they are, but again, they're formalized, 24 feet wide, one way in, and then exit onto New Street. New Street's a one-way street, so we've angled it to kind of force people to go in the correct direction, and then exit here on Fairfield Woods Road. And the traffic engineer will talk about the flows and impacts of light.
So the
signal
staff will be
systems.
coming in on the left,
On the
north
left,
side,
correct.
and the parents will be coming in over.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Questions for Mr.
Obviously, everybody will
Stallis?
be here if you think so. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stoller.
Thank you. In addition to, supplying a facility that really does meet a need in the community, one of the other nice byproducts about this, I think, from everybody's perspective, is we're going to have an opportunity to take the site, which has become derelict over the last few years, and restore it to something that is going to be aesthetically more appropriate and more pleasing for the neighborhood. And to talk a little bit about that, our architect is with us here tonight, and Tom Oliveto of Fletcher Thompson, and he's going to walk you through the exterior elevations and the interior floor plans that we propose.
Thanks, John. Good evening. My name is John Oliveto. I'm a principal with Fletcher Thompson, Architects and Engineers. For the design of the building itself, we essentially want to use the existing bones of the building, which we have determined are in pretty good shape. But we're going to totally transform the outlook, the exterior views, and both the interior views. This is a floor plan of the proposed interior layout, which consists essentially of 12 classrooms and some admin space and some lounge areas. The first floor is a little over 9,000 square feet. It does have a second floor area which will receive a new code compliant stairwell, which is about 600 or 700 square feet, which we now anticipate for mechanical and electrical. We don't want to have any HVAC equipment on the grounds of the facility at all. There may be a small condenser on the upper roof of the second story, but that would be it. In terms of the exterior elevations, we are proposing very simple yet durable materials. Again, we're going to reuse the existing bones and reclad the entire exterior of the building. It will consist of a stone base, which is a veneer, and don't necessarily go by these colors, but the stone will essentially look something like one of these two, subject to the approval of the Johnsons and his commission. For the siding, we are proposing a high-quality vinyl siding, either in a shingle look or a clapboard look, and you're welcome to look at the examples at your leisure. The upper portion of the building, we are going to create a mansard roof line that is very indigenous to New England. And by the way, the Johnsons are very self-conscious about how the building looks within the community, and this will have a very New England type feel. These are high-quality asphalt shingles. Again, the color scheme that we're presently anticipating is probably a brown base with a tan siding and perhaps a lighter brown roof shingle. The window mullions, Pat kind of likes the red mullions, but again, subject to approval. Yes?
I don't really understand subject to approval. I mean, obviously, you're, right, the property owners or the applicants are going to approve it, but I just didn't understand your statement when you said this or this. What are you asking this commission to approve? I just don't understand if we have
Well, obviously, the Johnsons will have to approve ultimate colors of materials.
Right,
But
that's-
right now, we're anticipating this color scheme.
Right, but we don't, I'm saying, we won't, if you're asking us to approve the application, we won't know the color scheme. We don't
I think
necess-
the intention was to provide you with an overview of what our intention is with regard to the design of the building, to try to give you a view with materials of those things. If you had, in the context, for example, a strong preference
Okay.
in terms of
Types of material.
Yeah.
types of materials,
Right.
that's why we brought them.
Okay.
Right.
Because we would have no quarrel with that. On the other hand,
Exactly.
if your thinking is, hey, look, you presented us the building, it conforms to our requirements, we like the look of the building, and as long as you build within the context of your elevations, your rendering, and these design plans, that's fine.
Okay.
But we wanted to at least show you very specifically what we're looking at. And
Yeah, I just
and
didn't-
we welcome any input you want to give us, and we honor that.
Now I understand. I just didn't understand what you were saying for approval. I said, were you asking us to choose that today or?
For choice of words.
Kind of like similar, for those of you who are on the board, if you remember the commission last year when we had the presentation on the Sims building, OSG. I remember the architect, the same thing, wanted to present you, and I think it provoked the same question. And then we said, no, this is what we're doing, but we wanted to give you the look at the materials, and if you had a strong feeling one way or the other, those are the materials we use.
Commissioner
But
Jacobson.
it's very limited.
Some question also on.
I just had a technical question.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't understand, what's the Mansour roof?
Mansard roof is the style of a roof like that.
Oh,
that just
okay.
hangs, kind of comes down the front of the building a little bit.
Oh, all right.
What's the conduit?
It's basically a short, angled roof.
Yeah.
That is really more for aesthetic than it is for function.
Style of the roof.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually in our regs. It's actually allowed, but I don't know, such use shall be limited. It's actually in our design standards,
Right.
but they are allowed for a commercial zone, for neighborhood design business district. Yes, Commissioner Francis has a question for you.
Then that will be a flat membrane roof?
Correct.
A white area?
Correct.
And doesn't that lead to a lot of long-term maintenance problems based on schools, our experience with schools in town?
A flat roof?
Yes. Wouldn't it be more
Uh,
economical to just,
It should not, as long as
Have a
it's specified correctly and installed correctly. And by the way, this would be proposed with probably a 20-year warranty.
Any other questions for Mr. Oletti at this time?
I do.
What do you? I wonder if you could.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the south elevation. Is this cutaway in the center, is that a doorway, I guess, on the south elevation?
Yes, actually, that will be a doorway.
Is that an
which
emergency
which
door, or-
It's required means of egress.
Right, so essentially, well, I guess I just want to ask for your opinion as an architect. This is going to be the area facing the main road there,
Correct.
Stratfield Road.
Correct.
So the orientation of this building, which as a market for decades was always on the main road.
That's correct.
Like all the other buildings in that area are aligned along the main road. This is going to be the side of the building now, rather, and the front of the building's New Street. I
That
guess.
is correct. No, the front of the building will be Fairfield Woods Road.
Fairfield Woods Road, I'm sorry, right.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you're right.
And we're
Fairfield Woods
proposing
Road, and
this,
that essentially facing the side of the little strip mall.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering from a streetscape point of view, the idea of a side of a structure along a main road, that's fairly unusual, I would think. I mean, in your practice, is there a lot of that, where you have a main road with the side of a building with just the emergency exit facing the main drag, when all the other businesses are aligned with their fronts facing the road?
It really depends on the function of the building.
Yeah.
And for this building to function properly, the entrance really wants to be
No,
here. But we are...
Couldn't do it any other way.
For the south elevation, we will create the gabled end, and we'll have the same fenestration as the rest of the building, so it will be just as attractive.
Yeah, there will, the two things, it's echoing what John said, basically. One, to make the site work in terms of the nature of the use, safe pickup and drop off and parking and so on, we needed to change the orientation of the building. But, and I also, Commissioner, I mean, when I first, we've been working on this for the better part of a year and a half, I kind of had the same the original take was, you mean the building's not gonna be fronting on Stratfield Road? But then when I really looked at, this is not gonna be some shabby, boxy, like, I'm looking at the side of a building elevation. This is gonna have a great deal of detail, it's gonna have the same detail, it's gonna have the same mullions, it's gonna have the same color, it's gonna have same glass. So when you go by it, it will not be unattractive. It's not gonna look like the side of a building. I'm not gonna mention any other buildings around town that look like sides of a building. This will look like you're going by something that has been fully developed and aesthetically pleasing.
And by the way, the rear of the building, which faces the parking lot, will have essentially the same fenestration.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions or any comments about the building materials or anything at all while Mr. Olivet was there? No? Okay.
Lastly, in our presentation, I'd like to introduce Kermit Waugh of KWH Enterprises LLC. Mr. Waugh is a licensed traffic engineer. He prepared the traffic analysis and study that has been submitted as part of this application, and I'd like him to briefly review and summarize his findings, and he is also obviously available for any questions you may have.
Good evening. My name is again Kermit Hua, KWH Enterprise LLC, Meriden, Connecticut. I will just briefly touch on the key points of the traffic study, and afterwards I will be glad to answer any questions you may have. First, a quick summary. We look at all the major intersection. Obviously, right next to the site is the intersection of Stratfield Road and the Fairfield Woods Road intersection, and we did traffic counts during peak weekday hours, morning and afternoon. And the finding is, the first is, we understand this is a relatively busy intersection, especially when you deal with the State Road Route 59 during peak hours. But in my professional opinion, the incremental impact of this development is minimal, just because of we have good access on four access roadways, and the specific configuration we have made, we have devised for the site. First, a quick words about the methodology. Like I said, we did traffic count during peak weekday hours, then we look at the existing condition, then projected a year out to look at when will the condition be if this project is not built, what the intersection level of service will be like. Then we compare that with the build condition, in other words, when the traffic condition with this project. And we did a traffic capacity analysis, basically give it a grade A to F to see what the grade is as far as the operation of the traffic at a major intersection, as well as at all the side driveways we are proposing. As far as one thing about pedestrian is we have a very good circulation on site for pedestrian circulation. If you look at a site plan, we have a sort of a loop around the building, and also we have all the continuous sidewalk along all the frontage roadways around the site. So we have pretty good site circulation for pedestrians, both from the inner loop and from the frontage road, the frontage of the roadway. My estimation of the total number of trips that will be generated by this project, that is in and out, in other words, the total of in and out during a peak hour is 123 in the morning peak hour and 120 in the afternoon peak hour. Again, this is in and out. So if you say half is in, half is out, so it's about 50 to 60 in, 50, 60 out during each peak hour. That's the busiest hour during a day, during a weekday. Obviously, these trips will be distributed on all four approaches of this main intersections. The way I distribute those trips is I look at the hierarchy of this roadway. Obviously, Route 59 is a busier road than Fairfield Woods Road, so I assume that will take about 60% of the trips, and the Fairfield Woods Road will take about 40%. Then I divided that because it's pretty balanced as far as eastbound, westbound, northbound, southbound. So I put 20% from westbound on Fairfield Woods Road and 20% on eastbound, then 30% on the state roadway approaches. So the findings of this traffic study from the traffic level of service perspective is the no build condition is at the intersection level during peak hours at D and D, in the words, level of service D for the weekday morning peak hour and D for the weekday afternoon peak hour. the build condition is E and D, so there's a little bit change. But in my professional opinion, the incremental change is minimal. And the other thing I want to emphasize is the site layout as currently proposed is a significant improvements over the existing conditions. If you are familiar with site, if you try to, say, exit on Stratfield Road from the site and make a left turn crossing the Stratfield Road, it is very difficult at this time, especially because it's so close to the intersections, and also because if you look right, look toward the north, your sight line is restricted. So what we did for this site is we devised a scheme essentially only allow people enter on Stratfield Road and exit on New Street and Fairfield Woods Road. So in other words, that not only sort of facilitate circulation on this relatively small site, and also sort of eliminate some of the site distance issues that currently exist in the field. So that's a great improvement. So in conclusion, in my opinion, the net traffic impact of this project is very limited, and there is some impact as far as incremental changes in level of service and delays, but we feel it is reasonable, and we have a good site layout, and this is a good location, and this is a good use, and the traffic circulation works, not only from the vehicular perspective, but from the pedestrian perspective as well. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kennelly has a question, then Mr. Jacobs. Commissioner Jacobson, and then Commissioner Calabrese.
Okay. Mr. Waugh, you mentioned that you looked at the peak hours, and I just want to read from page 2 of your report, describing when these peak hours were estimated. On page 2, it reads, under existing traffic conditions, traffic counts for the intersection of Stratfield Road and Fairfield Woods Road were collected during the weekday morning and afternoon peak hours of the adjacent streets on Monday, June 17th, 2013, and Tuesday, June 18th, 2013. During 2 days, the nearby Stratfield Elementary School was in session, but the Umpqua School to the south on Stratfield Road was closed for the school year. Their last day of school was June 4th, according to the calendar. And from these counts, the weekly peak hours were determined to be 7:15 to 8:15 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And the traffic volumes for the existing site driveways and New Street are negligible during the peak hours and all. A couple of things. It strikes me that you have to do the study when you're asked to do it, or when you're contracted. But it does seem as though the volume, and by the way, from that you have already a service at a level of D. That is correct, right? It's level D. But it does strike me that by doing the analysis when you did, was there any consideration for the possibility of much higher traffic volumes during cold weather months, when car traffic in this particular intersection dramatically rises because more students who are walkers within, say, under 1.5 miles from the or under 1 mile from the school are taken to school by car to Stratfield Elementary School just up the hill. Is there, this is a nice day where probably a bunch of kids who normally would be delivered to school. I know it wasn't in this period you're talking about up to 8:15, it would be a little bit later, about 15 minutes later. But these cars would have been would not be on the road in June. And obviously Umpqua School closed as well, which also has to have an impact on traffic.
I don't have the specific data for this location, at Route 59, but generally across the state, June or July months are the highest volume. If you look at, state of Connecticut, they have maintained probably several dozen continuous count locations, keep counting over the years. If you look at those numbers, generally, the June or July number are 10% higher than the average, and the winter months typically are 10% lower than the average. So there's a sort of a 10% to 20% difference between the winter volumes and summer volumes.
The only reason I ask that is because it does seem the colder the weather gets, the more cars there are at the elementary school.
I
mean,
agree.
it does. I mean, I would just only say, obviously I don't have the statistical evidence to support it, but anecdotally I would say.
I agree. For school uses, probably that's correct.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, as far as the peak month, I'm talking about the overall volume on the streets. So that encompasses everything.
Okay. I wanted to talk to you about the difference between level of service D and level of service E. On page 7 of your report, this talks about what the delay range is in signalized and unsignalized intersections. Now, under the signalized delay, you have a delay, I assume, of 35 to 55 seconds for D and 55 to 80 for E. Within the range, maybe I didn't see the underlying numbers. Usually it's Commissioner Barrett's who's good at really breaking that down.
I got 'em.
Oh, you got them?
When
Okay,
you're done,
great.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, you got them, all right. But maybe you could just tell us and cut to the chase. What were specifically, if you could cite the place in your report, what the difference was, for example, in the morning going from level of service D to level of service E? How much more of a, were we at 35 seconds of delay or 55 seconds of delay or somewhere in between at D? And where are we going to be in terms of our wait at service level E in the morning?
If you look at page 19, table 6, at the first intersection, the overall intersection delay is 69.8. So that's the worst case scenario for this project. That's the after build condition. So that's average.
So approximately 70 seconds, about the middle to 2/3 into level of service E, is what you're saying.
Right.
It's 55 to 80 seconds delay at a signalized intersection is level E service.
If you look, breakdown of how we arrive at the 69.8. I'm sorry. The main contributing factors are the left turns from Fairfield Woods Road. I think, in a way, that's sort of the state said their signals. They usually give preference to the through movements. In other words, on Route 59. So, in other words, they de-emphasize the service to the side streets. So, in this case, we have a little bit more delays on Fairfield Woods Road, which is sort of expected the way signal work. They want to maximize the throughput on a state roadway.
The reason I ask is because I'm in that intersection virtually every day, either as a commuter or dropping my son or something like that. And the traffic already in the current no-build environment is challenging.
Right.
And you can see that beyond just the wait times, that there does seem to be an impact on pedestrian safety. And I wanted to ask you another question regarding the traffic flows, and then I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners. You mentioned that there are sidewalks. When I'm in better physical condition, I'll be jogging southbound on Stratfield Road, and oftentimes already, as I'm going down 59 southbound towards Fairfield Woods Road, it's already a kind of stressful place to either try to cross the street as a pedestrian, either as a jogger or as a runner. And now it seems like with this traffic pattern, you're going to be creating this loop where...
No, it's not a loop. It's all two one-ways.
Right, but it's going to be, basically you're going to come in along Fairfield, you're going to come in to the entrance on Stratfield Road, and you're going to be going along in front of the building, and then coming back out either on, I guess, on New or Fairfield Woods Road, right? It's a loop, essentially, right?
It's Fairfield Woods and then New Street, the two exit entrances.
But for folks who say have come in and want to get back out onto the state road, they're going to have to come back to Fairfield Woods Road.
That's correct.
Right. So I'm just concerned about the intensity there in terms of the potential for physical danger to pedestrians and athletes and all the rest who are already finding it difficult to navigate between the site of the current former Stratfield Market and the strip mall there. I guess your study doesn't really break that down, but it does seem as though would be a concern.
I think like I want go back to the one-way driveway point is in the past probably you have to dodge traffic from two directions, right? Both in and out. Right. In this case, you're only in on Stratfield Road. So don't you think that's a little bit improvement?
But my concern would be that it loops back out. I'm saying it's going to come back out. People are going to be coming back to Fairfield Woods Road to get back to the intersection, perhaps to go north or south on Stratfield Road.
So what you do is you can make a right turn from the driveway on Fairfield Woods Road.
Right.
Then you can use the signal. You can go north or go south. So that's controlled. It's similarly you can use New Street, make a right turn, use the signal.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Jacobson, were you next, and then Commissioner Calabrese, or?
Actually, Commissioner Kelly
Calabrese was
my
next?
question.
Oh, Commissioner Kelly covered, so Commissioner Calabrese then.
Okay. Well, first let me say, this is my neighborhood as well as Jim, so I'm in that intersection every day on my way to work, so I know the traffic pattern there, and I know it is already extremely dangerous. To jump off of, to piggyback on what Jim was already Commissioner Kelly was talking about, did you guys consider a different traffic flow with this? Maybe the entrance being on Fairfield Woods Road with the traffic coming back out onto Stratfield. What my biggest concern are for the people that are coming southbound on Stratfield Road to make that left-hand turn into the parking lot, which will go one way. When you've got across the double line and you've got the arrow from Fairfield Woods Road, people turning left. I mean, those people fly through that intersection and take that left-hand turn. I'm worried that someone's going to get clipped coming across there.
I think, compared to alternatives, if you either can enter from, Strathfield Road or exit from Strathfield Road, I think enter is much better option compared to exiting from Strathfield Road. You have to cross northbound approach, then sort of try to merge onto the southbound approach.
Well, if I stop at the light, I get the arrow to turn on Fairfield Woods Road left, so I could turn left at the arrow, which I'll have, so no oncoming traffic's gonna hit me. I go down Fairfield Woods Road, I loop into the parking lot, I come back out onto Stratfield Road, I can go right or left. I mean, I guess you could still get a little dangerous there, but
It's difficult to exit from, if you want to make a left turn from a driveway on Stratfield Road.
that would be tough, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed. I was just wondering if you guys had considered a different flow. I mean, you're the professional here, so.
I think, the site engineer, was responsible. They went through several iterations. They feel, talking to with clients and so forth, the operations also, this works better, given the context of this location.
Besides the traffic flow, I think the building is gorgeous. I mean, compared to what's there now, anything, it would be great, so, thank you.
I just want to clarify one thing on it was what Commissioner Kelly said, just make sure I'm reading the numbers right, because I personally don't put much stock in the letters, because, so I just want to make sure I understand the delay numbers.
Sure.
The overall delay at the intersection for weekday peak currently with existing conditions is 52 seconds, and after built conditions, it would be 69. Understand what I'm saying? Like, if your threshold from D to E is 55, okay, let's say it was 53, it would take a small jump. I'm more interested in the total delay. So the delay is actually increasing from 52 overall, taking all these factors, to 69, and then on the weekday PM, it's going from 46 to 51.
Right.
Am I understanding that's why that's staying at D? Do I understand those correctly?
Right, yep, correct.
Okay, so absolute, I'm just looking at the absolute delay, because again, you could be right near the letter change anyway. and
Exactly,
It could be
that's just nature
insignificant.
of the letter grades.
And you could stay within the same letter, and it could be a large increase depending on where you're going within that range.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Commissioner Jacobson has a question.
I
sir?
do have a question. So the only area you're going to be able to enter from is from Stratfield Road. So you can make a right off Stratfield Road, that's okay, but you're going to have to make a left on Stratfield Road to get in.
Going southbound, I guess.
If you're heading south.
If you're heading south.
Right.
That's a really tough left.
Yeah, it is.
Can I, you want to go next? Yeah, I'll let Commissioner Jacobson give the.
No, I'm done.
Commissioner Jacobson, just a comment. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Kennelly has another question.
Mr. Watt, I wanted to ask you also about the afternoon peak, evening peak time. One of the prime commuter trains that arrives is a 5:40 out of Grand Central that arrives just smack in the heart about this time you're talking about, to about 6:15 p.m.
Right.
I'm actually also in that traffic as well. When I get off at when I'm lucky enough to catch the 5:40, just about 6 o'clock, after I've walked all the way to the end of the train station I pay for, I then get in my car and it takes me about 15 minutes. So I'm right there at that end of that peak, and this facility will be at the end of the day. Right, it's a 6:30 end, I think? 6:30. 6:30. So literally the kind of the last pickup is going on then. Right.
Which is not a really busy time.
Oh, I hope so. I mean, I want to ask a little bit more about that as we go. But again, you're basing sort of levels of service and what's appropriate, or what's expected based on state norms, as opposed to any kind of longer study here. There was a brief study of this time period in late June, right? In other words, it's a combination of estimating where you think traffic will go, and then also looking on those 2 days in late June
So
as
it's
to what
a
traffic is
peak
there.
of the roadways,
Right.
not necessarily the peak of the uses.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
roadway is what counts ultimately. Because when we talk about level of service, we're talking about roadways.
Right.
If you look at all the driveway level of service analysis, everything is okay, A and B, and no problem there. The only problem location I highlighted is the intersection. We understand there's a problem. Our
Right.
point really is the incremental contribution from this development. If you compare to the overall picture, it's not that significant.
Well, let me ask you this, because it is, one of the things we have to do when we decide to accept a special permit under 27.7 is we have to decide whether or not this is in harmony with the neighborhood. And one of the key factors of us making that harmony test is whether or not, this is causing undue traffic congestion. And your view, in your professional opinion, that in the morning a jump of 18 seconds in terms of the delay time at that signalized intersection is not undue additional traffic congestion.
Like
I'm just
the-
asking if that's what
like
you
the chairman
consider by state
previous
standards,
mentioned,
not undue.
the nature of the level of service grade is it gives you a range. In other words,
Right.
if you are close to a range, you're going to jump. I mean, we feel, it's not necessarily sort of in this case, it happens from D to E.
And I think the reality too, and let me just speak to this, and I mentioned it in the letter of intent. This is a piece of property that's zoned in the business zone, the neighborhood design business zone. Now, the afternoon increase is 5 seconds, okay? But I say in the letter of intent, and knowing the nature of this operation, I feel very strongly about it, that whatever you are exactly right. We all know that during peak times, traffic can be difficult there. But I cannot, for the life of me, think of another use that would be less impacting during these peak times than what we're proposing. We are not going to be active as other businesses would be during that evening peak. Even our morning peak, we start at 6:30. Working moms and dads generally are dropping their kids who are going to be in our early morning programs or our full day programs at 6:30, 7 o'clock, 7:15. They have to get to work. They have to be the peak traffic problem in some other part of town or in some other town. So I do think it's important to keep in mind, because from a planning function, I mean, we've kept this, very focused on this very worthy application, but there's a long history here. And that history is borne out every time you drive by that building. And whatever is going to happen to that building, if we're going to talk about uses that will have impact during the peak hours under any analysis that somebody like Mr. Waugh is going to make, you're never, in my judgment, doing these things all over the place, you're never going to find a better use for less impact during those peak times than a child care center, because their peaks are generally not consistent with the roadway peaks, and their operation basically is spread out more over the course of the day. We have a lot of clients who will drop their kids off for a part day program at 11 o'clock, pick them up at 3 o'clock. We're not open on weekends except for special, very limited programs. We're closed in the summer except for a modest summer camp program if the neighborhood wants it. Is traffic a concern in that part of Fairfield? Absolutely. I've been caught up in it. We all have too. But this site exists, this building exists, barely, and something needs to go there. And if you look at all the other uses that the zone allows, you could do a much more impacting job in terms of the peak considerations we're looking at now with a use other than a child care center operating Monday through Friday.
Just one last question for Mr. Wall. I'd banter with you about what I'd like to see there, all the rest, but I've learned through painful experience not to banter with you. It can lead to some unfortunate consequences. So instead, I'll just ask Mr. Waz my final question. We didn't quite get through that haze of talking about what could happen. I'd like to focus on what will happen when this building opens. I'm trying to get a hook on whether or not, with my responsibility as a commissioner here, not about what, gee, it's been 7 years and nothing's happening. I'm asking you as a professional, is there any definitive standard that your that your professional standard that you all will point to that says something is particularly undue traffic, or is it essentially have to be decided in the eye of the beholder? In other words, if I'm going from a level of service D to a level significantly to a level of service E in a signalized intersection, 18 seconds, okay, which is essentially, when you look how these lights are timed, it's going to only jam up. I mean, you're going to have kids with moms crossing the street, all sorts of things going on. Is there a definitive standard? Would it have to go to a level of service F, 45 seconds, a minute? Is there some particular, is it a certain number of accidents? Is there a definition other than what a commissioner can estimate of what is undue traffic congestion?
I think there's no standard in the town, as far as I'm aware. There's no standard in the state of Connecticut.
So in other words, we have to make that choice.
I think, yeah.
All right, thank you.
I would hope when you make that choice, because I would say to you that I think the 5 and the 18-second delay that we're talking about here is equivalent, and I take this from a recent Supreme Court case in another context, but it was a zoning case. And the court, in ruling on that point, and the delay was longer than 18 seconds, said that in land use and zoning, the boards need to distinguish between traffic safety and traffic inconvenience. Okay? So if you really boil it down to your question, which I respect.
But let me just say, and I don't want to be argumentative at all. I just
No,
want to make
I'm
sure
not-
we just.
you're not
so
being
what I asked
argumentative.
Mr. Waugh was, what would constitute undue traffic congestion? Because as you're right, there are circumstances, for example, in an 830G application, where you truly have issues of safety.
Correct.
Are paramount. So there's a very big difference between inconvenience and safety, but I believe the standard for 27, under section 27, is what we would consider to be undue traffic congestion. Is
And
that
that-
correct?
and that's-
Because I don't think then that argument holds up.
That's
Is that
correct.
fair?
And I think the same thing, though, then, in terms of that, would be, you know, you need to balance in your regulatory planning function that level of inconvenience against all the other factors that the application makes. So we don't disagree.
Mr. Fallon, I have one more question, just, I mean, I know it's in here somewhere, there's a child ward in Trumbull, is that fully operational?
Oh, yeah.
That
Could you just come up, Ken, and
Yeah, I'm sorry.
introduce yourself, and if you're going to speak to the record, just...
Hi, my name's Ken Johnson. I'm co-owner of Child's World Academy in 3 locations, Trumbull, Monroe, and Peekskill, New York. The Trumbull location officially closed for care on Friday, last Friday. It's a long story having to do with the building and what the landlord intends to do with it, and we had to vacate.
Is the Monroe location? I'm just saying,
Trumbull.
is there a comparable thing that if one of us actually happened to go by, we could actually see one in operation?
Oh, yeah, in Monroe, on Route 25, at the intersection of 59.
Monroe and Route 25? And how big is that building?
Well, it's a part of a strip mall, but it's approximately the same size as what this is, in the mid 9,500, 9,700 square foot area.
Okay, no, that's good. I mean, it's a good guideline in case we wanted to go see that, how that operates if we happen to be in the Monroe Newtown area.
First thing, a question to ask.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Cannella.
Thank you, I appreciate it. If I could, and this could be either you, Mr. Fallon, or to the applicant. How, obviously, a study had to be done to decide that this would be the appropriate location for this.
Right.
So I'm wondering if, and I didn't see this in the statement of use, and I apologize again if I, the statement of purpose, I apologize if I didn't see it. Was there any kind of study done to look at where these children would come from?
Yeah.
Like, I just want to get a better sense of where the cars may come. I understand Mr. Waugh did his best to kind of look at how a state highway would go and split it in half. But what's the expected places where these young
I'm
people
going to
are
let
coming
Mr.
from?
Johnson come back to that.
Okay,
The
great.
one thing I want to
Right,
say in anticipation of that, and come on up, Ken, is, because I was going to clarify anyway, the Trumbull facility closed only because the landlord, who absolutely loves the Johnsons, has an opportunity to basically dedicate the bill. It's going to be new construction, a much larger, so they lost their lease. The landlord actually was very helpful in having them focus on Fairfield. But I think you can get a good answer to your question, because one of the reasons that I think so many people are anxious to see us get established here at Fairfield is those folks who are, a lot of whom, and he'll answer this, Trumbull, Fairfield, Easton, whatever people, they lost their facility last
So
Friday.
this would, in a
But
sense,
we think
perhaps
so, but
replace
you
the
can
Trumbull
address
Replacement. When we looked at the area, and compared where considering Trumbull as the comparison, we looked at where our families were coming from versus the Trumbull location versus this new possible location. We actually found that there were more families within a 1 mile radius of 12A Stratfield than there was within 1 mile of 5520. So in reality, we're actually, getting closer to our clientele, to where the needs are.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you. You have a question, Mr. Calabrese, or Mr. Johnson? No?
I'll let it go, Mr. Calabrese, yes. Or you'll think of it later, and then I won't be here to answer it.
That's all right.
Anything else before I continue?
No.
There are some letters that I'm going to submit. They came to me by email later today. I did send them to Mr. Wendt, so they would be part of your record at his official, but I just want to take a minute.
We didn't get them yet, so it's good to mention them.
Yeah, all right, and I'm going to provide them. Mr. Johnson brought hard copies of them.
Yeah.
So there's one, came in an email from Kathy Hayes, Haze, and basically, she is writing, on behalf of the Child's World Academy in support of their petition to open a child care facility in the old Stratfield Market building. As a Fairfield resident, I live less than a mile up the road off Fairfield Woods Road on Lucille Street. I consider the Stratfield area an extension of my community neighborhood. I've done my banking at the People's for years, got my gas at the Mobil, even taken from Mione's too many times a month, and I actually frequented the market before it was closing. From a personal perspective, I drive through this intersection daily, and I believe it'll be refreshing to see life come back to that building, so it's so prominent as it is so prominent in the neighborhood. Further personal, the convenience of that location is very much appealing to me, as both of my children, ages 3 and 1, attend CWA in Trumbull and have since moved to their Monroe location. When investigating child care options 3 years ago for my first child, after looking at many in Fairfield, I came away feeling disappointed in what I found, especially on this side of Fairfield. We ended up with CWA in Trumbull, which we felt was a great fit from the start, and continue to feel this way 3 years later. From an average resident's perspective, I did wonder about increased traffic in the area. As I mentioned, I drive through that intersection daily. However, that was a very fleeting thought, as I assume it will be much like the current traffic at CWA's Trumbull facility. I've dropped my kids off at all times of the morning, as well as picked them up at all times of the afternoon. And there's never been an issue with the number of cars. In fact, of their dozens or so dedicated parking spots, there's usually no more than 3 or 4 being used at any given moment, since each family has their own schedule and it works out wonderfully. I hope this note has helped add perspective from a resident and a child seeker's viewpoint. Best, Kathy McCarthy Hayes. And there's another one from Sandy Henry of 215 Woodmere. I'm writing in support of the proposal. My husband and I moved to the Stratfield area of Fairfield 7 years ago. At the time, the market was already closed, so we have yet to see that lot be used in any way. When we had our first child, all of our neighbors told us to register him at Child's World Academy. All the kids on our street were going there. I have high standards for preschool, as I am a kindergarten teacher. And over the past 5 years, I've been continually impressed with Child's World Academy. We now have 3 children. The oldest is attending Stratfield Elementary. We're so saddened by the loss of Child's World Academy, and we've done considerable research to try to find a replacement preschool. The closest alternative school does not have an extended hours we need, and would have my 2 children in 2 different locations. I have to drop off, pick up each child separately. You can imagine how difficult this would be for the little ones. We're beyond excited to imagine a new Child's World Academy so close to our home and right near Stratfield School. I have heard from other Stratfield parents that they cannot wait for it to happen. I know there is a need in the neighborhood, and frankly, I'm ready for something useful to be on that corner. Child's World Academy would provide Stratfield parents with quality daycare for their children, offer extended hours for parents who work, all in a super convenient location. Please make it happen. Then there is an email from Vianney Cruz, C-R-U-Z. It is briefer. My name is Vianney Cruz. I'm the mother of 2 children, and I live in Fairfield. My son attended Child's World Academy in Trumbull from 2013 through 2014. I'm writing this email as support for Child's World Academy with their relocation to Stratfield Road. I think it would be a great contribution. And she gives her address as 176 Nepus Road. And then the last letter that I have is from Bridget Holmes. It's an email. It's addressed to you. Good evening. I'm sorry I'm able to attend the evening's Planning and Zoning Commission as I am working, but I really wanted to express my strong support for the building of the new Child's World Academy. I live in the neighborhood and would be thrilled to see a high-quality daycare facility go into this vacant property. Not only am I a resident of the neighborhood, but I am a proud parent of a little girl who has gone to CWA from the time she was a baby until this past Friday. I cannot say enough wonderful things about the staff and owners of the center. There's nothing more important to a parent and to a community than a safe and nurturing place to help us care for our children when we are working, and to help them grow into happy, knowledgeable little people who are well prepared to enter our local elementary school. If I can answer any further questions for you, and she gives her phone number. So I just wanted to submit those letters to the record, and I'll provide them to Mr. Wentz. Get your copies. They've also been emailed to you. So I want to give the public an opportunity to speak. We spoke long enough.
You can ask one more thing, I'd like to get to the public too. If you have a question for the applicant,
And
now's
there's
the
one for the
time.
applicant, and that is this last one. Are there any are any of the CWA locations within, say, 150 to 200 yards of an elementary school?
I don't
I don't know.
know. We
I'm
have
just
two,
curious.
so I think the answer to that would be
One where the, you know, the
Yes.
morning use, I'm just curious, if they're right close to a public school like that.
You can't just yell.
No, well, actually, our preschool school might be, but
Okay.
it's around the corner.
I'm just wondering how the interaction
couldn't
was.
say
You know what I'm saying?
definitively
So
yes
how
or
the
no.
interaction is between you guys there and the drop-offs and stuff, that's all.
Well, one of the things that we would envision doing in the spirit of what I said in my opening remarks, I mean, two things, one technical and one, whatever. The technical is, our peak doesn't coincide with the elementary school's peak. In other words, because we generally take in the morning people at an earlier time. And those that are all-day participants generally are picked up at a later time. And those that are part-time come at all sorts of different times of the day. That's number one. The other thing, which is more aspirational, is what we said at the beginning. You know, one of the things we think is very exciting is the fact that we're proximate, not only that we're in a neighborhood, a real live neighborhood, but that we are so proximate to a local elementary school. And we see great opportunities for interaction there in terms of, some of our after-school programs, reaching out, being cooperative, whether it be in, as I said, sports programs or raffles or something like that, to really integrate ourselves, because as these letters that I just read indicate, a lot of the parents who are the constituency of Charles Grove Academy are also parents of Stratfield Elementary. So we see a great opportunity for symmetry there.
One last.
Okay, and then we really gotta,
I know really
we
gotta
got a
go.
lot
I
of
gotta-
public that's
I
been
know,
here
I
for a
don't know if they wanna
while.
tell me
I've got one more, too.
I have one more question
Yeah.
for you, Mr. Fallon, because honestly, I'm struggling with this. I live in the neighborhood, I want to do the right thing. And I want to ask you this question because I never got, all right, okay, Candy. I never got an opportunity to really I should have asked you probably when we had another issue about a medical building up near the Hi-Ho. And one of the concerns that was raised during that was if you're going to have a design neighborhood business district, it's supposed to serve the neighborhood.
Right.
And that was one of the issues, like, oh, we're going to have a regional medical center here.
Right.
And now my concern a little bit is that it sounds terrific that the Trumbull site has maybe more than 50% of its folks are going to be actually within a mile of this building, because maybe a lot of them will walk or push the strollers or something. That would be great and
Right.
stuff. But what I'm a little concerned about from the rationale where I have to approve this is that I have to give a special exception here because, and it's got to be held to a higher level of scrutiny, is close to half potentially of the clientele are not going to be from the neighborhood. They're going to be coming from Trumbull or wherever.
Well, there's a
And so I
distinction,
wonder,
though.
how do you answer that question?
Oh.
I'm supposed to be looking to approve of something, an entity that's supposed to be serving the local neighborhood. In theory, it's the local pizza shop or something. or
If
the
you
drive-thru.
get your regulations out.
Right.
What provoked the conversation that we had on the matter that you talked about was an explicit reference in the regulations, which Mr. Wemp has, somebody has them over there, that business and professional offices serving primarily local, there's language in there, okay? And so what provoked the conversation in the medical context was that, is this really, as a permitted use in the neighborhood, the doctor going to be, or is this a regional medical center?
But here
There's
we're-
no such provision in the neighborhood design district for daycare centers. Daycare facilities, childcare centers are permitted uses without any reference to serving the local neighborhood. Now, having said,
We can decide this. I don't know that I want you guys debating this,
but
because
having said that,
it's
I think it does have a very good neighborhood impact. But the technical point I want to make for the record is, it's a different standard. Child care facilities are permitted uses in the neighborhood district.
Okay, Mr. Calabrese, you have a question?
Last thing. I know I said I wasn't going to ask, now I'm tempted to.
I'm glad you did.
All right, so the Trumbull site closed. I just want to
As of
confirm.
Friday.
As of Friday. The Trumbull site was located on Park Ave,
Correct.
which was only 2.5 miles away from the current location.
More or less, I would think.
So the number, it's basically the same kids that should be attending this. I mean, it's only 2.5 miles further than
We
where
hope,
it was.
yeah,
I mean, you guys
correct.
said it's closer, more people are closer now to the
Right.
Fairfield site than they were to the Trumbull site. I mean, it's only a mile though.
Correct.
Trumbull site had 157 enrolled.
Right. On a typical day, it says between 60 to 70%, so that's about 100 or so
And this will be marginally smaller based upon the size.
Right. So do you guys have, do you guys have the numbers of how many Fairfield residents or Fairfield people go to your child care
Trumbull?
facility? Yeah.
Yeah.
Of the 157 that were there?
Okay, this is off the top of my head. I think the last time for Trumbull, I think it was in the neighborhood of 25 to 30% came from Fairfield. But when you say it's only 2.5 miles from Trumbull, we could be the best child care center in the world, but if we are terribly inconvenient in terms of driving, people aren't going to come.
You're one exit from where you were.
You know,
You were
so-
off
so the
47,
people-
you're 46 now.
I'm sorry?
You were off exit 47, right at the entrance
Right.
ramp, and now you'll be at 46, so...
I would imagine that some of the people that live in Trumbull won't find us convenient anymore, since we're right off 47. Anyway, I think that the question is having to do with where the people are going to be coming from.
Correct.
The demographic studies that I've done say that there are more than enough kids within 1 mile range of that location to make it a successful school for us and a successful school for the community. Now, we don't discriminate by geography, so if someone from Bridgeport wants to come to the school, we're not going to stop them, so I can't give you a guarantee of that.
No, I'm not looking for one. I was just curious of how many Fairfield residents, just
Yeah.
piggybacking again off of Commissioner
One of the
Connelly's.
letters, I think, made a very good point, and that is when you really think of the child care opportunities in Fairfield, first of all, I think we can use some more demographically, but secondly, in this part of town, there's none. I think I better save my summary because the chairman wants to get to the public, so I'll just...
You got something else to say?
No, I really, what I want to say is summary in nature, so I think the public should have an opportunity to speak.
Okay, so then, thank you, Mr. Fallon. So no further questions from the commission now. Just to go over our rules, the applicants completed their presentation. You have something to turn in? Yeah. Okay, so now the public will have the chance to comment. You can speak in favor or opposition to the application, or just ask a question. All direct questions have to be directed to the commission. Just raise your hand, ask to be heard. Nobody's not going to get a chance to speak if you want to speak. So we just go in order. You raise your hand. You have to come up to the microphone. We like you to state your name and address. We don't have a preset time limit. This is not like 2 minutes. But we do ask that your comments be relevant to this application that is being considered. 5 minutes is a good guideline, unless somebody's planning an elaborate presentation. We have a curfew at 11 o'clock. And when the public is done speaking, as Mr. Fallon says, he has a chance to summarize, rebut, answer any questions that he may want that maybe people have asked. So just give some guidelines. So now I would ask, does any member of the public wish to be heard? I'll go to the woman in front first. Everybody will get to speak.
My name is Joan Rasmussen. I live at 39 Abbey Road. I've been a resident of Stratfield all my life. I am in total happiness about the daycare coming because we have put up with a mess for 6 years. We can't take it anymore. I would like you all on your commission to welcome the Child World Academy. Every time I thought about something coming in, and Mr. Fallon is absolutely right. We could have a bigger mess than this lovely, and I've been there to the one in Trumbull, at our site. Now, I was concerned at the meeting that we had up at the church. My husband and I have had the flower box built on that property and have planted it, because I love my Stratfield so much, twice a year at our expense to make it beautiful. We have the trees all planted there. We care about it a great deal, and I think this Child World Academy would be an asset. Now, as far as traffic, when we had, and this is something I just thought of tonight, we had the market there. You've never seen such a mess of traffic. So I don't think I would worry about the traffic when it's got a certain time, 6 to 6:30. So I would hope that you would think hard and fast about accepting these people in our town, in our part of town, because I totally accept them coming here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rasmussen.
think it was Stratfield Road.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Nick Novia. I live on Farmington Avenue, and I just want to express my feelings that this is not the place for childcare, and I hope that you would oppose it as I would. So let me just, if I can, expound on a real reality and visual, because I am a stay-at-home dad, and I bring the kids to school every single day. I have one in North Stratfield. I drop her off, and then I drive back down to Benet. I go down Stratfield Road from the hill, coming down across all the way down to Brook Lawn, and left over to Park Avenue. And the gentleman with the traffic study who says it ends at 8:15, it doesn't pick up until 8:15, where then you have 2 lanes every way of stopped gridlock. And so here's how it comes from my house. Down Farmington Avenue, left on Wilson, going across Valley, which now is starting to turn into a cut-through street, because when you get down to Churchill Road, it's backed up. And my experience is, if you're 3 or 4 cars deep already there on Wilson, coming down to Churchill, you're already taking a right on, coming around to Flushing to get over to Churchill. Or, if you do get to that intersection, you can't make the right because their cars are blocking the box all the way over to Fairfield Woods Road. You guys see that, you know what I'm talking about. So you take a left on Churchill Road, and all those streets from Churchill, Bond, and L Street, Laurie, whatever, they're all cut-through streets now. So I'll stop, or I'll try to go around that traffic, and it's dangerous. It really is dangerous. So then I drop them off at Stratfield Road, and here's what drop-off is. And to compare this to the Trumbull site, which I have some neighbors that went there, and I've been to that building many times, that is 0.2 miles away from any public way. You're on Park Avenue, there's traffic, but you're in and you're out and that's in the back of the building. This has 3 streets around it. Maybe if you come in from New Street, one way, that might be a way to ease the traffic going in and out. But, I lost my train of thought. So here's what so I get to the school, yeah, a lot of kids take the bus. More and more people are driving their kids. And I don't know why it's so crowded there at Stratfield intersection. The last 5 or 6 years have really seen a big change. We need some infrastructure change. Just like when they put the metro station in, they had to change all the roads. We have to change the roads there. There's not a day that goes by that all of us in Stratfield ride by that building trying to think what it would be good for. Well, I'd do this, I would do that. So when I pull into the school, it's a single file line going into the school. And you get to the circle where you drop off your kid, you take your cards into park, you open up the doors of the minivan, goodbye darling, kiss goodbye, grab your bag. There's no seconds, it could be a minute if the person in front of you is not out of your way. So it's a constant stop and go in the schools, and then you're out. Now, what's it going to like when you have, 70 kids? So our public schools, they open up at 6 o'clock. We have early drop-off at schools, and the kids stay till 6 o'clock for all the after-school things. So it's the same thing, but the majority of the kids are going to be at the school between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. That's going to be the big rush, and that's where it is there. So imagine what that's going to be like. You got the mobile station parking all their cars to work on in the parking lot now, and they're on Stratfield Road parking. Miones and everybody there loves that parking lot the way it is now, even though we would like to see something done with the building. It's hard to think that it's really been detrimental to the property values just because it's empty. It doesn't look good, but they've been working on it. We're desperate for something to go in there. I can't think of anything worse than another school because, we have like 15 schools within a mile. I mean, just go up, you have the Akeem School right there on the left-hand side. Then you go up to North Stratfield School. Going the other way, you have the Unclewood School and Assumption. Up there's Ward, Stratfield School, Jennings School, Fairfield Woods School, and then you have the Methodist Nursery. Then you have the Beth El. There's another daycare center on Black Rock Preschool, which is on Bennett Street. There's like 15 schools all around it. The place is bedlam at that time of day. It's the worst case scenario. You want to buy a boat, you buy it for the worst case scenario. You want to put an occupancy in something, you have to think about the worst case scenario. I think when they get in there and they see that people pull into the lot with 22 staff, where are the people going to stay and drop kids off? Most preschools, you get out of your car, you walk your kids in. With 22 staff, I could imagine they could all be in the parking lot like our public schools do and meet the kids. But still, it's going to be, you're going to go in Stratfield Road, try to turn in there. Then there's going to be a line out of the parking lot, and you're not going to be able to turn in there. Now, coming down Stratfield Road, going back to the south, Fairfield Woods is locked up tight, all the way up to the Fairfield Woods Library. So people coming up Stratfield, down Stratfield, all want to go up Fairfield Woods Road. When it's gridlock, everybody just gets out of the lane and goes blowing through the left turn lane, and they just go wherever they can to get through there. It's a very dangerous place. People who walk there, God bless them. I know everyone's desperate for something to do there at the building. It's horrendous that it's empty.
Mr. Novi, could you just address your comments to us, and then
I'm sorry.
try to wrap it up too, please?
Okay, so what could be worse here? A Dunkin' Donuts? I don't think a Dunkin' Donuts is worse, because that's a steady thing. This is exacerbating the morning drop-off. So, are there some things, too many schools in one spot? I think maybe there might be. The bank's not making a lot of traffic there. The mobile station's been there for years. It's packed. Anyway, that's my feeling. I hope that they would vote against it. I notice it's getting to be pretty emotional, but folks are desperate because the building's empty. I don't think it's that detrimental being empty. I think worse things can happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Novi. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Yes, ma'am. And then, I'm sorry. You go, you'll be next.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Liz Esma. I live in the Strathmore condominiums. My unit is across Stratfield Road from the property. I'm largely in favor of the project. In honor of Commissioner Kennelly, though, I have 3 questions. The first of which is, can the presenters describe the signage that is proposed for the property, both building and street, if it's applicable?
We can ask them to do that in rebuttal, yep.
Also, if any of the after-school students arrive by bus, any arrangements with schools, or is it all car?
Okay.
And the third one is, I noticed, because I cross that street a lot, those cross signals are relatively short. It's a very wide intersection. I'm just wondering, in terms of bringing children across the street, if there's any way to adjust the timing of
That's state highway, I think.
Yeah, so that defers to the state.
Yeah,
State is
he's right. 59 is a state highway, so.
They get priority over the local.
Right. They may decide to adjust it based upon different
And that's
conditions,
inserted
but
in the
that's not
application
within our
process?
purview to do it, or the applicant.
We wouldn't have control over that, is what we're saying.
Okay.
It's a state.
Yep. But we'll make sure, we'll try to get your other questions answered by the applicant.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Esima. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Please be careful.
Good evening. My name is Allison Shanker. I am a resident in the North Stratfield area. We live on Harwich Road. I've heard nothing but good things about Child World Academy, but I'm speaking now as a working mother who has a 9-month-old in daycare in Fairfield, and my concern goes back to the parking and the traffic flow. Logistically speaking, I have a 9-month-old daughter. I have to get her out of the car. I got to put the winter jacket on, the gloves. I have to take the bag of the food. I'm walking into the daycare. I'm signing her in. I then don't just drop my daughter off and leave. I talk to the teachers about what has gone on the night before, any concerns. That's about a 10-15 minute process. So my concern is with the parking. 10 parking spaces just seems very small, and especially with, obviously the positive feedback that all these current parents from Trumbull are saying that they're so excited to have a Child World Academy open up in Fairfield. It sounds like the enrollment would be high, which is great. However, I'm just thinking logistically, how is that going to work with only 10 parking spaces? Then you're going to get traffic build up on Stratfield Road, or on Fairfield Woods Road, North Stratfield Road. I'm still a little confused about that traffic pattern there. Basically a whole circle. it's not just let me pull in and drop my kid off, or the kid walks in by itself. I mean, if the center is servicing babies that are as young as 6 weeks old, and I'm a mom, I have a 9-month-old, you have to bring that baby in. I have tried for months to try to master this down to get it under 15 minutes for a drop-off. It doesn't happen. So it sounds like if you're going to have such a high enrollment of parents, you're going to need more staff. So that would mean all those staff parking spaces would be taken, which would then cause a backup of traffic onto North Stratfield and Fairfield Woods Road, because I'm just concerned that parents then would be waiting backed up on the road to get a parking spot, because it's not just going to be an in and out procedure. It's going to take at least 10-15 minutes. So I would just urge you to think of, rebuttal with that, some type of solution, at least providing more parking spaces with that. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Schenker. Yes, sir.
Jack Harder, 166 Benedict Ave, and I'm your demographic. I'm a fifth-generation Fairfield resident. I work for the American Red Cross. I'm a drowning and injury prevention specialist, and my wife's a special ed teacher. We're both working parents, and we have a 22-month-old who attends Child World Academy. But Trumbull did up until Friday, when the center closed. We live in that Stratfield neighborhood. That is our neighborhood, so I would love to see the center actually take place there. On nice days, we would probably walk there if the weather permitting and the child's behaving. That would be the best way to get there. Really, some of the concerns that I've heard, though, even with parking and such, currently the Trumbull location, our daughter's been there since she was, I guess, about 6 months old. I think when we brought her, she was born in March. My wife's a teacher, so we brought her in September after, when the school year started. The Trumbull location actually has 3 spaces that are sort of right in the front that say 15-minute parking, designated for drop-off and such. And I can probably tell you on my hand how many times I have not been able to get one of those 3 spaces. So actually, even with 10 spaces, you're probably going to see 7 of them that are empty most of the time. The pattern is pretty interesting because it is not like a school. It's really, my office happens to be right around the corner on Brooklyn Ave, so I can almost walk to that as well. But when I drop my daughter off, I drop her off at varying times sometimes. I may drop her off at 8 one morning, I may drop her off at 9 another, and then between when my wife comes back from teaching, we may pick her up at 5 or we may pick her up at 6. And there's really never too much of a concern that we've seen coming in and out of there. It's actually almost more dangerous in the medical building because you almost get hit by the patients who are coming out of there sometimes. I think this would really be a great improvement for the neighborhood. Obviously, it's better than what's sitting there right now that's been vacant for years. But my wife and I would definitely, we really were struggling. We loved the program. We loved Child's World Academy. The staff was great. The owners have been terrific. And I think it's something that's really needed in this town. When we looked around for childcare, when we moved, or we're in Fairfield, my wife grew up in town as well, went through all the schools like I did. This was really one of the things that we had to look at is, where are we going to put our child? We called around to different centers as well. My sister lived on Brooklawn Terrace, and her 2 children went through their program. So they were neighbors right around the corner as well. So really, it's something that needs to be there for the neighborhood, for the people who do live here and have kids who are younger. Some of the people who are here as well, just some of the different names I've seen, including the attorney and the others, I grew up with their kids as well, and we all went through the Fairfield schools together. So one of the issues really is good quality childcare that's easily available. With our daughter, we want to go back to Child's World Academy. Currently, we had to move her away to another center because since we both work, the center's closed. We had to move her over to another one on Park Ave, which we're happy that she's there and she enjoys it, but we really would like to get back into the Child World Academy program. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Harder. Yes.
Jennifer Hochberg, 232 Churchill Road. I'm also on the RTM for Fairfield District 7. I have 3 words for this application. It's long overdue for the neighborhood. I grew up in that neighborhood. I drive by there on a regular basis. I've heard from my neighbors and fellow constituents 2 words. eyesore and blight. Even though I know the landlord has fixed up the property, it would be a welcome addition to the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hochberg. Yes, sir.
I'm the contiguous neighbor.
What's your name, sir?
Stratfield. Jeff Rao. I live on 1316 Stratfield Road.
Okay.
I've lived there for 35 years. My kids all went to Stratfield School. It's my neck of the woods. This is a terrific project to go into this neighborhood. No question about it. I looked at the plans in detail this weekend with Aris. It would beautify that corner substantially. We have fretted about traffic on Stratfield Road ever since I've lived there. It's a busy street. There's no question about it. There has got to be a solution to the, and truthfully, I think that a good solution is being proposed here. People manage to survive the harrowing commute every day up Fairfield Woods Road, and it is, my experience is that it peaks at 8:15 in the morning when the junior high school is just before it comes in. I think that the case has been very well stated here that this use will not overtax the traffic in this area. It's a busy area. The traffic is inevitable in that area, but the school would be a substantial addition to the neighborhood. And I think that there are solutions being proposed here that are low impact and will beautify that corner of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Joan Kleinig. I live at Dogwood Green. I'm a retired school teacher, 24 years, 28 at Dwight School. I was on my way home and I remembered this meeting tonight. I liked what I heard tonight, but I have thoughts. My thoughts are the camp. What are the ages of the children that are going to be there? What is the program? Will they be with the little children? Will there be buses there? I have a strong feeling, and I hope you listen to me, about that entrance and exit on Stratfield Road. It's a killer. If the people are going in there and out of there, I would like to see what the gentleman said about New Street, using New Street, because that's a one-way street, and if they can come in and out of there somehow. If it gets worse, you'd have to hire a policeman. It's a dangerous, dangerous place now there. No one has mentioned the mothers or the fathers who back up all the way to Dogwood Green on Stratfield Road, afternoon and in the mornings, to drop off the children and pick them up from Uncle's school. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. So thank you for letting me express that.
Thank you, Ms. Kleinig. Anyone else? Yes.
I'm Julie DeMarco. I live at 962 Stratfield Road. And we've been here since the beginning, and this has been a long and brutal process. We have neighbors who have moved in since the IGA closed, and they're a whole different generation. They don't understand the emotion or why we would allow for this building to deteriorate like this. This plan is not a market. We've missed the window for a market. It's not going to happen. We've tried all sorts of combinations of stores, of restaurants. We even worked on that zoning regulation, which we're hoping to bypass. You know, it's full circle. But I have to say this plan, well, it's not a market, it's livable, it's attractive. The applicants have worked with our neighbors. We had concerns about the buffer, those were addressed with the Rouse. We had concerns about the planter, and that was addressed with the Rasmussens. Those are two things that were very, very important to us. The appearance of the building has been addressed. It looks way better. I've been to the Trumbull site before it closed, and I was able to go inside. I've been to the Monroe site outside. I can go inside. I've never been to Peekskill. But they've really tried to accommodate the neighborhood, and they've really tried to make themselves a part of the neighborhood. The traffic's an issue. You know, I believe that anything that goes in there is going to cause traffic. I live on Stratfield Road. I live directly across the street from Umpqua School. I don't think there's a safe place to cross. I would love to see something done with the traffic, but that's not your purview. I do have a few questions, and that one is the signage, because I don't see an indication other than, from here. Okay, I can see that from here, that it's on the side and it's not huge. But my concern also was in the planter, there's the two, the goal that says Stratfield Market. I don't know if that comes down, and maybe you can address that when you come up. And also if the mailbox will still be there. That's been a concern of the neighbors. We sent an email to all of our members, and that's about 220, and I didn't receive one negative email about the project. I heard two concerns tonight, and that's perfectly fair. But of all the membership, I think people are just ready for this to move on. It's never going to be a market. It isn't. But even having said that, it's okay to move on and to have a different plan. And this is better than what is there now. It's addressing needs of the neighborhood, and I feel like they're really willing to work with us. So thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. DeMarco. Anyone else wish to be heard on this application? I'm looking around and not seeing any hands up, realizing that once we close public comment, we go back to the applicant, and this is, unless he introduces some new evidence or something, this is the last opportunity to speak on this application. So I just want to make sure, you got everybody? Okay, very good. Thank you for everybody who participated. Mr. Fallon, I know you're going to sum up. I heard a number of questions. If you've got them and you're going to address them, that's great. If not, I'll try to do the public a favor by reiterating them.
No, I think I have. If I miss any, you let me know.
Okay, very good.
Just another housekeeping, you obviously have a letter from the Department of Community and Economic Development. I'm not going to read it, but that is dated January 22, 2014, in support of this application and for some sound reasoning there. Number one, no buses. Okay, no buses, period, no buses. Second, summer camp. Summer camp is not a definite. Summer camp will depend upon a number of factors, and that's all driven by our clients. If, for example, we have the need to maintain services for parents of infants and smaller children during the summer months because they work full-time, then, then we wouldn't have a summer camp. If we don't, and there's the opportunity to provide a service because there's interest in summer camp programs, we do it. But like any summer camp, we carefully group our children by way of ages, and it's very professionally run. So the summer camp is not definite, but it's something we'd run like any other program that we do. Signage we haven't proposed at this point. We wanted to get the building done. We know that involves another trip. We show one small sign here. Somebody mentioned that sign in the plant. We're making no claims on that. We don't have interest in that. So we'll come back to you.
There won't be like a giant Child World Academy.
No.
It seems like the neighbors are good with everything.
Yeah, no. We promise. We won't do that. We would like, flashing and so on. Seriously.
We are interested in that sign because it's one thing to say you don't have a sign plan separately.
It almost gets back, doesn't it, to the conversation you had in executive session today about destination-oriented businesses and other types of businesses. But the bottom line is, we don't intend to apply for any variances for signage. Signage will be understated. We don't need a lot of evening lighted signage. You get the picture. Now, let's talk about the things that were interesting. I think it was Ms. Schenker. I appreciate her comments, but I think, as Mr. Carter said, first of all, even with infants, first of all, we would never have, by way of our program, I didn't mention this before, but Pat told me, that infant population, maximum of 16. We don't expect we'll get that many, but in other words, this isn't going to be full of infants. So that gets partially to the point about how it might take a mother with an infant child longer to facilitate, drop off and pick up and so on. So that's number one. Number two in that regard, even there, it's the experience of the Johnsons and their staff that most parents have to get to work. That's why they're dropping their children off. And once they've established at the beginning that relationship with the teacher, they seldom do hang around 15 or 20 minutes. They basically are dropping the child off and leaving. Having said that, there's a comment in one of the letters I gave you. There's a comment from Mr. Carter. If you go up to the Trumbull facility when it was operative, those 10 spaces there were always, he said it better than I did. So I don't feel there's any issue here in terms of prolonged pickup or drop-off. These folks have been in this business a long time, and they can testify to that. With all due respect to Mr. Novia, with all good intention, and I'm sure sincerely, he paints a picture that has nothing to do with this application. We are not a school. This gets to the heart, I think, of some of the comments that we had before. We are a child daycare facility. Why is that different? Schools do stress traffic situations during specific peaks of their peak time. We've all heard that from Mr. Galante and all the public school applications I brought before you and probably will again. We're different here. We provide a range of services for a range of children in a range of hours. We have, as I said at the beginning, those moms and dads who drop the kids off at 6:30 or 7, pick them up at 5:30 or 6. We have a whole range of parents who drop off kids at 10, 11, pick them up at 2 or 3. We don't create the kind of real strong, although very focused traffic impact that a public or private school does during, commencement and dismissal. That's not what we do. And in that lies the benefit here. The questions about 22 staff, we have 22 staff parking spaces, but as I said to you at the outset, we're very unlikely to have 22 staff people on hand at any time because, again, the programs are staggered. The needs are staggered. And that gets to the point that I made before. You couldn't impose any use here, run a traffic analysis like Mr. Hogg did, and not find a considerable and maybe even more significant impact during peak hours. If we had been successful in all of our, quote, mutual efforts, and we were bringing the pantry over here. Do you go to the pantry? I love the pantry. I'm at the pantry every day. It's a wonderful thing in the town of Fairfield. Do you go there? Do you go there on weekends? Do you go there during holidays? Do you go there in morning, afternoons, evenings? So if I were standing here tonight and we were going to have the pantry here, and we'd all be happy about that, let's face it, it's been a long haul for all of us. But you'd have to deal with traffic. And I would submit to you, you would deal with traffic then in terms of impact during peak times, because we haven't even talked about weekend peak times, would be more significant than this. The point I'm making is that in the final analysis, Commissioner Kennelly is correct. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, what might go. You still have to look at this and make sure that the traffic doesn't create adverse impacts with the neighborhood. I agree with that. The only point I'm making is there's no use that we could propose for this site that will have less impact during those peak periods than this, for all the reasons that I've said. Because our use is spread out, it's quiet on weekends, it's quiet during the summer, and even during those peak weekday times, are we going to increase the delays? Yes. Are we going to do so of any significance to the point where it would have an adverse impact on the neighborhood? I don't think so. I think respectfully the neighborhood which is maybe the best arbiter of that, doesn't think so. And at the end of the day, I really think this is a great solution for this long dealt with piece of property. It affords a use in the neighborhood for which there's a real demographic need. In this case, it's a little more dramatic than that because we have some families that have been displaced because of the closure of the Trumbull facility. It's run by some of the nicest people. I've only known them for a year and a half, but they have reached out to this neighborhood, and that's only the start. They see this as a neighborhood child care facility. That's not to say people won't come from Trumbull or wherever, but the spirit of this place will be neighborly as it relates to the neighbors, Stratfield School, and everything else. So I think at the end of the day, if this all boils down to traffic, you respectfully, please don't think about it, with all due respect to Mr. Novia, as another school in the neighborhood. We are not. And we don't have patterns like a school, we don't have populations like a school, and at the end of the day, you've had people in letters and in person tell you tonight, those 10 spaces there during peak times, 2 or 3 are all that's ever filled up. That tells you how our pattern of operation is. And you won't do better from a traffic perspective than this use. And ultimately, aesthetically, and the service we're going to provide, I think it's a very fine resolution of what has been a long-term and difficult problem for the town, this commission, and this neighborhood. So we appreciate your consideration and your patience and your attention. We thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon. And with that, we will close the hearing, and we're done for the night. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody that came out.